The story begins with an old memory from a hot summer day. A young Kim Won-hak takes Lee So-woo to a hidden bunker that only the two of them know about. He wants her to stay there with him, but she suddenly runs away because she feels afraid of him. The story then moves to a rainy day at a high school. A group of girls complain about the endless rain while looking at a huge military blast wall outside. Turns out the wall is about to be demolished, and one girl says a terrible tragedy may have happened there. The girls start joking about ghosts and restless spirits. At that moment, Lee Si-woo suddenly wakes up at her desk after hearing their conversation. One of the girls gets startled because Si-woo is standing behind her without making a sound. The classmates laugh and call Seo-woo a gloomy ghost. They make fun of her and act like she does not belong. Because of this, she quietly sits down and holds her stomach. At school, Seo-woo is treated like an unwanted person. Everyone believes she only wants attention, so nobody cares about her. She ends up feeling just like the abandoned blast wall that everyone wants to get rid of. After school, Seo-woo returns home. Her parents barely react to her arrival, and her father even says she should have come home later. But things get worse when her cousin Choi Ji-won openly complains about living with her. Ji-won says the room is already too crowded and vacation will only make it worse. Her mother explains that no other relatives can take Seo-woo in. Instead of arguing, Seo-woo quietly goes into her room. A little later, Seo-woo's aunt comes to comfort her. She apologizes for Ji-won's behavior and gives her a small bag with overnight supplies. She even suggests staying at a friend's house, but sadly, Seo-woo has no friends at all. With nowhere else to go, Seo-woo walks alone through the heavy rain. She eventually reaches a lonely overpass where someone once lost their life. While looking around, she notices an old bunker hidden below the hill and decides to use it as shelter. Seo-woo enters the bunker and shuts the heavy metal door behind her. The underground air feels warm, humid, and strangely quiet. After changing into dry clothes, she lies down on an old sofa and closes her eyes. Everything stays quiet until a metallic creak suddenly echoes through the bunker. Seo-woo quickly wakes up and looks toward the stairs. Surprisingly, the bunker door is now open, even though she clearly remembers closing it. She immediately realizes someone else is inside. The lights suddenly turn on, making the bunker feel even hotter. At the end of the hallway, a figure slowly walks out of the darkness. Seo-woo notices the person is wearing the same school uniform. The clothes are covered with dark stains, making the scene even more frightening. She instantly runs toward the exit as fast as she can. Just as she reaches the door, another hand grabs it from the other side. The heavy metal door slams shut before she can escape. Now she is trapped inside with this guy. The bunker becomes silent again as Kim Won-hyak stands right behind her. His face is bruised and his clothes are stained with blood. Seo-woo slowly turns around and realizes she is standing in front of the very person everyone always tells her to avoid. Kim Won-hyak is the only person Lee Seo-woo ever dares to approach. Now she is trapped inside the bunker with him. The air feels heavy as she looks at his bruised face and blood-stained shirt. Kim Won-hak leans against the wall before reaching for the large steel wheel on the bunker door. With one final turn, he locks the entrance completely. As a result, both of them are sealed inside the dark bunker. The terrifying sight reminds Seo-woo of their past. She recognizes Kim Won-hyak from their elementary school days. This memory quickly takes her back several years. When Seo-woo is only 10 years old, she loses her parents in a tragedy. She moves in with her aunt and transfers into her cousin Ji-won's class. Even after moving, she struggles to fit in with everyone else. Seo-woo follows Ji-won and her friends everywhere. Unfortunately, she still feels like an outsider because nobody truly accepts her. Her lonely life continues until one strange night. A loud scream suddenly wakes Seo-woo from her sleep. She rushes to the window and looks outside. There she sees a lonely boy quietly sitting on the steps. From that day on, Seo-woo keeps watching the boy from her window. Surprisingly, seeing him every day makes her feel a little less lonely. Eventually, she asks Ji-won about him. Ji-won tells her the boy's name is Kim Won-hyak, but things get worse when she immediately warns Seo-woo to stay away from him. She reveals that Kim Won-hyak's father is responsible for a terrible tragedy. Ji-won explains that his family moves there to escape the rumors. She also says the woman screaming that night is probably his mother, who never recovers from the incident. Because of this, everyone at school hates their family. Later, Seo-woo sees boys covering Kim Won-hak's gate with hateful graffiti. They quickly run away after making a mess. She quietly watches the cruel scene from a distance. Kim Won-hak scrubs the graffiti off the gate by himself. Suddenly, this guy notices Seo-woo standing nearby and turns toward her. For the first time, the two of them make eye contact. Kim Won-hyak tells her to leave. His cold attitude scares her, and Ji-won's warning immediately comes back to her mind. As a result, Xiaowoo turns around and runs away. At school, Kim Won-hyak remains completely isolated. He forgets his school supplies and even his indoor shoes, so both teachers and students constantly look down on him. Everyone only remembers that he is the son of a criminal. One day, Xiaowoo notices Kim Won-hyak sleeping alone at his desk. The lonely sight reminds her of the boy she always sees outside. Surprisingly, she cannot stop thinking about him. After her classmates leave, Xiaowoo stays behind on purpose. She slowly walks toward Kim Won-hyak's classroom and notices the door is already open. A few moments later, she quietly steps inside. Another memory appears from those days. Xiaowoo remembers cleaning an empty classroom all by herself. Suddenly, the next moment changes everything. She finds herself on the classroom floor looking up at Kim Won-hyak. Our boy quickly checks on her while breathing heavily. Before she can react, he suddenly pulls her into a tight embrace. Xiaowoo immediately struggles to break free. She tries to pull away because the situation feels completely unexpected, but Kim Won-hyak refuses to let go and keeps holding her tightly. His body shakes as he clings to her. The memory becomes even clearer as Xiaowoo remembers how close they are that day. Without thinking, she gently pats his trembling back. Slowly, the tension in his body begins to fade. This guy clings tightly to her as if he finally finds someone he can trust. Xiaowoo realizes something important in that moment. If she had not helped him earlier, he would have been left alone in that dark place. Turns out she approaches him because she sees another lonely child just like herself. Kim Won-hyak keeps holding onto her shirt for comfort. The quiet classroom remains completely silent around them. Their strange bond begins to grow from that day. Another memory appears as Xiaowoo carefully walks toward Kim Won-hyak from behind. She gently pats his shoulder to comfort him. Surprisingly, he suddenly collapses onto his desk and falls into a deep feverish sleep. A few days later, Kim Won-hyak is absent from school. Xiaowoo quietly worries about him because he never comes back. She starts wondering if he is still sick. Later, she finds him outside near a gate, trying to scrub something off the metal bars. The moment he notices her, he quickly tries to run away. As a result, he accidentally drops the cloth in his hand. Xiaowoo calls out to him before he gets too far. She takes out a small eraser and shows it to him. Then she places it on the pillar between them. She tells him the eraser works better for cleaning. She also says he can return it at school the next day. This simple excuse surprisingly gives Kim Won-hyak a reason to see her again. After Xiaowoo leaves, Kim Won-hyak immediately grabs the eraser. He holds it tightly in his hand. The small promise works exactly as she hopes. Kim Won-hyak returns to school the very next day. From then on, our boy starts following Xiaowoo almost everywhere. Around her, all of his cold defenses slowly disappear. The two of them begin spending time together on the same stairs where Xiaowoo once secretly watches him. Their friendship slowly grows stronger with each passing day, but things get worse before it can truly last. A terrible incident suddenly destroys their fragile bond. Everything changes after that day. In the present, Xiaowoo realizes she abandons Kim Won-hyak and simply runs away from him. Back inside the bunker, Kim Won-hyak steps in front of the exit. He refuses to let Xiaowoo leave the bunker. His desperate actions remind her of the day he clings to her as a child. Xiaowoo accidentally drops her phone onto the metal stairs. Before she can grab it, Kim Won-hyak quickly pulls her away from the exit. He insists that going outside is dangerous and forces her back downstairs. Xiaowoo notices the blood covering his hands. She starts wondering what really happened to him. At the same time, she begins to suspect something much worse. Kim Won-hyak slowly walks closer to her. His confused expression makes Xiaowoo realize he is not thinking clearly. Because of that, she decides not to argue and quietly follows his instructions. Then Xiaowoo remembers their childhood together. She decides to calm him the same way she does years ago. At the same time, she secretly searches for another chance to escape. She suddenly grabs Kim Won-hyak's arm and notices his serious injury. She offers to find first aid supplies while he cleans himself up. Her real goal is simply to make him lower his guard. Kim Won-hyak immediately pushes her hand away. This guy easily sees through her fake concern. Instead of believing her, he orders her to move. A moment later, he corners Xiaowoo against the bathroom door. The situation becomes even more tense as he leans close to her. Surprisingly, he only opens the bathroom door and quietly tells her not to go outside because it is raining. Kim Won-hyak walks into the bathroom and leaves her alone. Xiaowoo still cannot understand why he refuses to let her leave. No matter what, she decides she has to escape. As the sound of running water fills the bunker, Xiaowu quietly sneaks downstairs. She searches the floor for the phone she drops earlier. She plans to grab it and run the first chance she gets. Suddenly, Kim Won-hak knocks on the bathroom door and calls her name. Xiaowu instantly freezes where she stands. Her escape plan falls apart in seconds. The silence continues for several moments. Kim Won-hak warns her again from inside the bathroom. He asks if she is planning to leave without him knowing. He even threatens to come out if she does not answer. A loud splash suddenly echoes through the room, making Xiaowu panic. Realizing he does it on purpose, she quickly shouts back that she is still there. Kim Won-hak calmly tells her to bring him a towel. His voice leaves no room for argument. Suddenly, Xiaowu realizes she cannot stay alone with him any longer. Panic takes over as she abandons the towel and rushes toward the bunker exit. She grabs the heavy steel wheel and pulls with all her strength. Unfortunately, the hatch refuses to open. Siwoo desperately keeps pulling on the locked wheel. She even wonders if the old hatch is broken. Then a quiet dripping sound suddenly comes from below. She slowly turns toward the stairs. Kim Won-hak walks out of the bathroom with water still running down his body. Surprisingly, he is now standing there bare-chested. Kim Won-hak suddenly walks out of the bathroom without wearing a shirt. He calmly says it is faster to get the towel himself. Xiaowu instantly freezes because she never expects to see him like this. Her face turns bright red as she stands on the stairs. She cannot even move from the shock. This guy slowly walks closer until he is standing right behind her. Kim Won-hak gently places his hand over hers on the cold steel wheel. Then he quietly tells her that the hatch will not open. As a result, Xiaowu realizes he has been watching her the entire time. He traps her against the metal stairs without using force. Water drips from his hair and lands on her cheek. Embarrassed, Xiaowu asks about the towel, and he simply reminds her that he still needs it. A few moments later, Kim Won-hak walks away. The pressure finally disappears, allowing Xiaowu to breathe again. Then she suddenly notices her phone lying on the floor below. Before she can react, Kim Won-hak calls out to her. He stands in the doorway while drying his wet hair with a towel. He casually asks why she is still standing upstairs. Xiaowu slowly walks down the stairs toward him. Just before entering another room, Kim Won-hak turns around. Then he calmly reveals that the bunker door probably will not open anymore. He explains that the heavy hatch locks itself if it closes too hard. He also tells her not to waste her energy trying to force it open. But things get worse as Xiaowu realizes he knows this from the beginning. She quickly grabs her phone and checks for a signal. At the same time, she remembers seeing Kim Won-hak washing the blood from his white shirt in the sink. The dark red water makes the memory even more disturbing. Siwoo desperately looks at her phone. Unfortunately, there is no signal anywhere inside the bunker. Even worse, the battery is almost dead with only 5% left. The terrible reality finally sinks in. She is trapped inside an underground bunker with no way to call for help. Nobody even knows where she is. Another memory suddenly flashes through her mind. She remembers Kim Won-hak leading her into this very bunker years ago. Everything now feels connected in a terrifying way. Inside the bathroom, Kim Won-hak quietly washes a small folding tool under running water. He carefully cleans every part before snapping it shut. Then he slips it into his pocket without saying a word. Another memory appears from their childhood. A young Kim Won-hak stands alone beside a metal gate with bruises on his face. Siwoo secretly watches him from behind a wall before quietly walking away. The painful memory makes everything clearer. Siwoo starts believing Kim Won-hak locks her inside because she abandons him years ago. Turns out she thinks this is his revenge. The bunker feels even hotter as fear takes over. Kim Won-hak calmly walks out of the bathroom while drying his hair. Once again, he reminds her that the heavy bunker door locks itself if it closes too hard, and tells her to stop trying to escape. Siwoo asks Kim Won-hak how long he has been coming to the bunker. He calmly says it has been a few years. This immediately makes her realize he has probably been trapped here before and knows more than he shows. The two of them walk through the long concrete hallway together. Kim Won-hak tells her there is nothing interesting to see. Siwoo quickly makes an excuse, pretending she only wants to learn the layout of the bunker. She decides to act the same way she did when they were younger. Soon, they stop in front of a different colored door. Kim Won-hak simply says, "It is locked." Siwoo becomes curious about the hidden room. Kim Won-hak turns on the light, revealing a fully equipped infirmary. She is surprised because the bunker has a complete medical room inside. Kim Won-hak enters the room and sits on the examination table. He takes out medical supplies from the cart and starts treating his injury. Siawa watches quietly as he carefully wraps a clean bandage around his arm. The room feels tense as Siawu tries to get closer to him. She asks if his injury hurts. This becomes her chance to show concern and lower his guard. When Kim Won-hak stays silent, she quickly changes her approach. She offers to help because treating himself alone must be difficult, but he refuses and says she will get blood on herself. Siawu realizes he is uncomfortable with the stains and changes tactics again. She stands up and offers to bring scissors for the long bandage. However, before she can move, Kim Won-hak suddenly grabs her foot. Siawu freezes as his warm hand holds her bare foot. Kim Won-hak notices something she does not even realize herself. There is a piece of glass stuck in the bottom of her foot. He calmly tells her to stay still because moving will only make it worse. Then he carefully removes the glass shard. After that, he gently places a bandage over her injury. The unexpected kindness surprises Siawu. She feels confused because she expects him to hate her. Before she can say anything, Kim Won-hak suddenly stands up and walks away. Siawu quietly says she is going to sleep first. She leaves the room without waiting for his answer. Kim Won-hak stays behind and watches her leave. Later that night, Siawu lies awake on the small couch inside the bunker. The silence feels heavy as she looks toward Kim Won-hak sleeping on another cot. She wonders if he is actually asleep. The memory of him treating her injured foot keeps coming back. She believed he hated her, but his actions make her unsure. Eventually, exhaustion takes over and she falls asleep. While Siawu sleeps, Kim Won-hak quietly leaves his cot. He sits beside the couch and watches her peaceful face. Then he gently reaches out and holds her hand. The bunker becomes strangely warm as Kim Won-hak stays beside her. His expression softens while he looks at her. The moment reminds him of their past together. A painful memory suddenly appears. Young Kim Won-hak stands frozen as a woman grips his shoulders. She tells him that he looks exactly like his father. The woman's words leave a deep scar on him. She warns him about becoming like his father. The memory fills him with fear and pressure. Kim Won-hak suddenly returns to the present. He gasps for air as the painful memory disappears. A tear falls down his face while he sits beside the sleeping Siawu. He slowly lies down near her on the small couch. The sound of their breathing mixes together in the quiet bunker. For the first time in a long while, Kim Won-hak finds a little comfort. After some time, Kim Won-hak wakes up and watches Siawu sleep. He carefully stands up and reaches for a bag on a nearby crate, but his hands slip, causing the contents to fall onto the floor. The sudden noise breaks the peaceful moment. Kim Won-hak looks down at the spilled items. Among the supplies, 2 small dark packets are lying on the crate. Outside, heavy rain continues hitting the bunker window. Siawu moves under the thin blanket and slowly wakes up. She opens her eyes with a tired expression and holds her forehead. A small plate suddenly appears in front of her. Kim Won-hak has prepared food for her. The simple gesture reminds Siawu of another rainy day from the past. Back then, Kim Won-hak finds Siawu sitting alone on the stairs. His quiet presence feels different from the cold atmosphere at her home. Meanwhile, her mother is already packing a bag for her to stay somewhere else. Her mother insists that Siawu already has a place to go. Ji-won notices that Siawu never even says she is leaving. The situation makes it clear that her family feels more comfortable when she is away. Siawoo's mother continues packing her things while pretending to care. Ji-won quietly watches from her desk. She understands the truth, but struggles with guilt as she adds a few personal items into the bag. Ji-won's mother does not know the real reason behind Siawoo's trip. If she finds out Siawu is going to meet someone else, she would never allow it. Meanwhile, Ji-won's sister looks outside the window, worried that Siawu might cause trouble somewhere. She remembers how their mother sends Siawu away just to keep her out of the house. She tries calling Siawu, but the phone is turned off. This strange timing makes her suspicious. Standing in the heavy rain, Ji-won's sister keeps trying the number. She walks through the dark woods while checking her phone. Suddenly, she notices something shocking on the screen. Back inside the bunker, Siawu slowly wakes up from her sleep. She sits up on the couch and realizes it is already morning, but the familiar underground room still feels terrifying. She notices she is completely alone. Then a loud metal sound echoes from above. Her eyes immediately move toward the hatch as fear starts building again. Siawu quickly stands up and checks the sealed exit. The situation feels exactly like before. She quietly calls out Kim Won-hak's name, but only silence answers. A memory suddenly appears in her mind. She sees herself standing in a bright doorway before turning around and running away. The memory becomes a desperate chase through dark storage rooms and empty hallways. Seo Woo pushes open a heavy door and enters another empty area. The huge hallway stretches into the darkness. She looks around, searching for Kim Won-hyuk, but he is nowhere to be found. At the breakfast table, Ji-won sits with her family. Her father asks if she slept well, but she admits she had trouble sleeping. Her mother casually says she slept better because the gloomy kid is no longer around. Her mother suggests that Ji-won should stay at her friend's house more often. Ji-won immediately loses her appetite and puts down her chopsticks. She leaves for school without saying much. Outside, heavy rain continues falling. Siwoo walks alone through the empty streets with a serious expression. She passes a large gated building before continuing forward. Back inside the bunker, Seo Woo sits alone on the couch. A terrifying thought enters her mind. Kim Won-hyuk is gone. She wonders if he abandoned her, but the broken door proves she cannot leave either. Her phone still has no signal, leaving her completely trapped. At first, a small hope appears. Siwoo thinks her family or someone nearby might eventually notice she is missing, but that hope quickly disappears when she remembers how invisible she always feels. Nobody noticed when she was hurting before. Nobody came looking for her. The silence inside the bunker becomes even heavier. A desperate thought starts growing in Seo Woo's mind. Her only chance depends on one person returning. She begins wondering what will happen if Kim Won-hyuk never comes back. The word alone keeps echoing in her mind. Then a soft, dripping sound suddenly breaks the silence. Seo Woo looks up and sees Kim Won-hyuk standing near the entrance. He is soaked from the rain and carrying a cardboard box. The sight of him instantly changes the atmosphere. Her fear slowly turns into relief as she sees him again. Kim Won-hyuk silently watches her with his intense eyes. The cardboard box falls to the floor with a heavy sound. Before Seo Woo can react, he quickly walks closer. He gently places his hand against her forehead. The unexpected touch surprises Seo Woo. She looks up at him with wide eyes as the distance between them disappears. Won-hyuk steps closer and checks Seo Woo's forehead with his hand. He notices that her body is getting dangerously cold. Because she is exhausted and barely conscious, Seo Woo collapses against his chest. Meanwhile, heavy rain continues pouring outside the old school. Back in the classroom, the teacher tells everyone to settle down for homeroom. But she suddenly freezes when she notices Seo Woo's desk is still empty. She quickly wonders why the missing girl has not shown up, and pulls out her phone to call her. Before the teacher can investigate further, she asks Ji-won about Seo Woo's disappearance. Ji-won turns around with a completely cold expression. The students immediately start whispering about the strange relationship between the two cousins. They point out that Seo lives nearby, making her unexplained absence even more suspicious. Ji-won simply claims she knows nothing about Seo. She even says that she barely sees her cousin despite living in the same house. The teacher orders Ji-won to try calling Seo again and report anything she learns. Then, she tells the rest of the class to begin their self-study period. Meanwhile, two boys in the back start whispering about Won-hyuk. They call him the murderer's son, and suddenly realize that he is also missing today. Because both Won-hyuk and Seo Woo disappear at the same time, the boys sarcastically connect the two disappearances and bring up their dark history from elementary school. Jo-won stands beside the window and watches the heavy rain outside. Her expression remains cold as she wonders if Seo Woo and Won-hyuk are secretly together somewhere. She looks down on Seo Woo as nothing more than a failure. Outside, the rain becomes even heavier and pounds against the bunker door like it is sealing everything underground. Inside the cluttered bunker, Seo Woo remains unconscious on the sofa. The gloomy light flickers above her as she sleeps for a long time. Eventually, she slowly opens her eyes and tries to understand the unfamiliar place around her. But things get worse when she notices a strange silhouette behind the storage shelf. Seo Woo immediately jumps up in fear and becomes completely alert. Won-hyuk casually asks if she is finally awake. He then coldly points out that she is the one who rummages through and dismantles the things around the bunker. Seo Woo lowers her head in silence, clearly frightened by the sullen boy. She nervously grips the edge of her shirt while watching Won-hyuk search through the boxes. The girl notices that he is busy looking for something among the clutter. Because being left alone scares her even more, she slowly approaches the dangerous boy and asks what he is searching for. Won-hyuk reveals that he is looking for Seo Woo's belongings. This leaves the girl completely confused because she has no idea what he means. Our boy then casually gives her several essential personal items and tells her she can use them. Seo Woo quickly refuses because she claims she already brought everything she needs. But then Seo Woo remembers the paper bag containing those sensitive items. The painful humiliation from earlier suddenly comes rushing back. Won-hyuk notices the issue and points out how uncomfortable it must be for her to use those things from the bag. He even makes it clear that he would never have the courage to do the same if he were in her place. Siwoo is stunned because she never expects him to understand her situation so well. Won Hyuk then asks whether she actually saw the sensitive items inside the bag. Embarrassed, Siwoo lowers her head and explains that she only saw them by coincidence. She remembers how her aunt handed over that bag, making it feel like a humiliating eviction from the only home she knew. Siwoo quietly thanks Won Hyuk when he gives her a toothbrush. She tries to hold on to the last bit of dignity she has in the gloomy bunker, but his strange act of kindness makes the situation even more confusing. Now, the question remains whether Won Hyuk is really helping her or secretly carrying out his revenge for what happened years ago. Siwoo still wonders if Won Hyuk locked her inside the bunker as part of a revenge plan. The image of his bandaged face from their childhood suddenly comes back to her. She cannot understand what he really wants or why he has imprisoned her in this place again. So, she keeps her questions to herself to avoid triggering his violent side. The questions about the fresh blood and the locked exit continue troubling Seo-woo, but she chooses silence because confronting Won Hyuk feels far too dangerous. Then, memories of the violent boy from her childhood suddenly return. Still, when she looks at him now, she starts wondering if she can trust the person he has become. Sewoo gathers her courage and finally asks why he stopped her from leaving before. Won Hyuk freezes for a moment and lowers his head. Instead of giving her a clear answer, he explains that the bunker door locks automatically when it is hit with enough force. But Sewoo immediately becomes suspicious of this convenient explanation. She starts wondering if getting trapped together is really just an accident. His strange disappearance earlier also makes the situation even more suspicious. Sewoo becomes convinced that Won Hyuk knows more than he is admitting. Meanwhile, this guy quietly focuses on finding a way out of the bunker. Won Hyuk suddenly stands up, making Sewoo flinch and step backward. His cold expression and messy hair make him look even more intimidating. The girl becomes terrified that her questions have pushed him too far. She quickly regrets asking about such sensitive matters. Won Hyuk's silence continues to make the bunker feel suffocating. Then, he suddenly reveals that he never actually went outside. This completely destroys Seo-woo's theory about his mysterious disappearance. She immediately wants to know where he had been hiding. Instead of answering, Won Hyuk bends down and searches through the old belongings. He pulls out a can of food and casually gives it to Seo-woo. The sudden kindness leaves her completely confused. Even worse, a whole box of canned food is sitting nearby. Seo-woo starts questioning where all this food comes from. The bunker is supposed to have been abandoned for decades, yet the supplies look surprisingly fresh. If Won Hyuk took everything from the bunker kitchen, there should not be this much food left. She also cannot understand why they never crossed paths while she was desperately searching for an exit. The fresh supplies make the bunker feel even more mysterious. Siwoo quietly decides to sneak into the kitchen and investigate for herself. Meanwhile, above ground, a barbed wire fence stands beneath the gloomy gray sky. Heavy footsteps begin crushing the weeds as someone slowly approaches the bunker. A dark shadow stretches across the bunker hatch. The unknown visitor's presence creates an immediate sense of danger. Down below, Seo-woo is busy drying her hair when a strange call suddenly echoes through the bunker. She freezes in fear as the quiet atmosphere is completely shattered. Won Hyuk sits motionlessly against the cabinet door. Seo watches him closely and wonders what this guy is planning. His exhausted face makes her suspect that he may have fallen asleep. Seeing her chance, she slowly begins moving toward him. Siwoo tiptoes across the bunker without making a sound. She holds her breath while keeping her eyes fixed on Won Hyuk. The boy remains completely still with his eyes closed. His awkward sleeping position even makes it look like he is extremely uncomfortable. Then, Seo-woo makes a bold decision. She looks at the box of canned food and realizes this may be her only chance to escape. She carefully sneaks toward the door while Won Hyuk remains motionless behind her. For now, he seems completely unaware of what she is doing. But Won Hyuk is not simply sleeping peacefully. Exhaustion pulls him into a disturbing dream filled with painful memories from the past. In the darkness, cruel voices remind him that he is just like his sinful father. Another warning demands that he never remember what happened. Won Hyuk suddenly jolts awake with a dazed expression. The question of whether he truly wants to survive continues haunting him. The dark shadow and those terrifying warnings feel like chains trapping his mind. Back in the bunker, he leans against the cabinet and struggles to steady his breathing after the nightmare. Won Hyuk returns to reality after the nightmare and leans against the cabinet. His hands tremble as he grips the edge for support. Suddenly, his sharp eyes notice the strange silence around him. He looks toward the sofa and realizes Seo-woo has completely disappeared. Meanwhile, Seo hides nearby while watching his unstable reaction. She reaches the kitchen shelf and confirms that this is where Won-hyuk got the food. But surprisingly, the cans have expiration dates from decades ago. The food is clearly spoiled, making the whole situation even more suspicious. Seo starts searching through the supplies in panic. A can slips from her hand and rolls across the dirt floor with a loud sound. She looks at her shoes and starts questioning whether Won-hyuk actually went outside to get fresh food for her. But the broken bunker door makes that possibility seem impossible. Seo bends down and picks up the can. She cannot understand how Won-hyuk could somehow move in and out of the bunker. His words and actions simply do not match. The more she investigates, the more suspicious this guy becomes. She then walks toward the large blue iron door. Won-hyuk previously claimed that this room had been locked for a long time, but now the entrance is wide open, making Seo wonder if it is actually a secret exit. Then she remembers Won-hyuk's soaking wet feet when he returned. If there is water somewhere behind this door, it could finally explain where the moisture came from. Si-woo presses her ear against the cold metal and tries to listen. Unfortunately, the thick door blocks every sound. Suddenly, a strange noise makes Seo jump. She quickly realizes the sound is not coming from the blue room. Instead, the rotary valve above the trapdoor starts shaking violently. Someone is trying to break into the bunker through the main entrance. Seo stands frozen for a moment as the danger outside becomes obvious. She is now trapped between Won-hyuk's secrets and an unknown person trying to get inside. But the desire to escape becomes stronger than her fear. She quickly runs up the iron stairs. Just as Seo reaches for freedom, a large hand suddenly covers her mouth. It is Won-hyuk, who grabs her and drags her back into the dark corner beneath the stairs. His strength leaves her unable to fight back. He warns her that she absolutely cannot go outside right now. Seo freezes in terror as Won-hyuk restrains her. She realizes this situation is completely different from what happened between them years ago. The bunker feels even more suffocating as the knocking above becomes louder. If she cannot escape now, she may never get another chance. The rotary valve keeps shaking violently above them. Seo struggles against Won-hyuk's hand while the stranger continues trying to break through the hatch. Won-hyuk's eyes become razor-sharp as he carefully watches every movement outside. He is clearly on high alert. Then, fresh blood begins dripping from between Won-hyuk's fingers. The blood runs down Seo's chin, creating a horrifying scene. Won-hyuk tightens his grip to keep her still, even though the wound on his finger continues bleeding. Seo stares at the deep cut in shock. Won-hyuk suddenly grabs Seo's jaw and demands that she spit out whatever she is hiding in her mouth. His expression becomes terrifyingly intense as he refuses to let her hide anything from him. He orders her to act immediately while keeping his eyes locked on hers. This is the angriest Seo has ever seen him. Seo realizes that Won-hyuk may have touched his own wound during the struggle. She becomes even more frightened because he has never treated her this harshly before. Even inside this horrible bunker, he had previously cared for her and treated her injuries. Compared to what is happening now, that gentler version of Won-hyuk suddenly feels like a distant luxury. Seo trembles on the dirt floor as fear slowly drains her strength. Won-hyuk lowers his head, hiding the emotions behind his cold expression. The terrified girl bursts into tears and begs him to stop looking at her so violently, but he only stares at her with a sharp and haunting gaze. The sight of young Seo from the past suddenly flashes back. Back then, the little girl stands frozen with tears in her eyes. She is completely helpless as the painful fate between the two broken children unfolds. Those memories make the present moment feel even more painful. Won-hyuk remembers Seo running through the darkness during their childhood. He then returns to reality and gently places his bandaged hand against her tear-covered face. Both of them slowly sink onto the cold floor in silence. For once, the terrifying boy tries to calm her instead of hurting her. Won-hyuk quietly reassures Seo that he will never scare her again. He lowers his exhausted head and desperately asks her to stay with him. Seo looks at him in shock because she is used to his cold and unpredictable behavior. His sudden vulnerability makes their situation even more confusing. Suddenly, loud knocking comes from above. Seo looks toward the stairs as the pounding against the hatch grows stronger. Won-hyuk watches her with an exhausted expression, clearly struggling with his own fear. He grabs the flashlight and its bright beam cuts through the darkness. Seo finally demands that Won-hyuk stop hiding things from her. She questions why he happened to be in this isolated place when everything went wrong. Won-hyuk realizes that she still does not trust him enough to tell him everything. The girl steps backward until her worn shoes reach the cold iron stairs. Won-hyuk watches his old friend with a complicated expression on his scratched face. Seo-woo warns him that she will scream if he comes any closer. She also makes it clear that she will leave if he refuses to explain everything. Her sudden defiance leaves Won-hyuk frozen and visibly hurt. Seo-woo quickly starts climbing the iron stairs. Her legs shake badly, but she keeps moving toward the exit. Won-hyuk suddenly drops to his knees and reveals that the man has appeared. He explains that he had to flee and hide inside the bunker to escape him. Seo freezes when she learns that going outside would be almost certain death. She then asks if the person outside is really Won-hyuk's murderous father. Won-hyuk silently nods in confirmation. His face shows the despair of someone who has nowhere left to run. Seo-woo stands frozen as the truth sinks in. She hesitates at the bunker entrance because screaming for help could expose their location. Still, she reaches out and tightly grips the metal valve wheel. Then, she forces herself to face whatever is waiting above. Suddenly, the man's figure appears beyond the trapdoor. His cruel smile is partly hidden by the heavy rain. Seo-woo immediately recognizes the terrifying murderer and collapses onto the iron stairs. She curls up in fear as her worst nightmare returns. The girl becomes terrified that this man might kill both her and his own son. Her breathing becomes faster as panic completely takes over. Won-hyuk quickly kneels beside her and gently holds her head. He tries to calm her while keeping his determined eyes fixed on her. Seo-woo looks up at Won-hyuk in shock. Even in this terrifying situation, the boy is trying to protect her. His expression shows a clear determination to keep her safe. Seo-woo weakly calls his name as she clings to him for support. Meanwhile, Seo-woo notices the cold green iron door nearby. Outside, the stranger continues rattling the bunker hatch but eventually gives up because it remains locked. The immediate danger disappears for the moment, but the two teenagers are still trapped underground. Above ground, a male student tells his friend that he ran away from home and came to hide in this neighborhood. His friend sarcastically questions whether the old brain injury has finally made him lose his mind. He then brings up Ji-sung Chan, who transferred schools immediately after the bloody incident involving the murderer's son. Ji-sung Chan transferred schools right after the bloody incident involving Won-hyuk. Horrifying memories show Sung Chan being brutally attacked until the back of his head is crushed. He touches the old scar on his neck while facing the painful reminder. Then, he looks toward the barbed wire fence and quietly brings up Won-hyuk's name. Sung Chan's expression turns cold as he mentions Nam So-woo as well. A calculating smile appears on his face. It becomes clear that he is preparing to return to the place where everything happened, and this time a new storm is about to begin. Back at Seo-woo's house, the aunt is busy vacuuming the floor. The phone suddenly starts vibrating on the table and interrupts the quiet room. She answers the call from the homeroom teacher and immediately loses color when she learns that Seo-woo never came to school. The news leaves her staring blankly into the empty room. The aunt quickly tells the teacher that Seo-woo is staying at a friend's house. She also claims the girl probably lost contact because her phone was not charged. After ending the call, she stands silently among Seo-woo's books and notebooks. The whole room suddenly feels much colder. She slowly walks toward the bookshelf and notices an old picture frame. Inside is a photo of Seo-woo smiling happily beside her parents. The aunt stares at the picture for a long moment. She quietly wishes the girl could have inherited even a little of her late father's appearance. Meanwhile, Seo-woo sits inside the bunker holding a screwdriver. She looks at the crude tool but quickly realizes it cannot help her break free. So, she starts searching the ruined shelves for another possible exit. Every step across the broken debris echoes through the dark bunker. In the distance, Won-hyuk continues working with the medical supplies. His back remains turned toward Seo-woo, making the girl hesitate to approach him. She keeps searching while the identity of the person outside continues troubling the situation. Won-hyuk's claim about his murderous father makes everything even more dangerous. Seo-woo decides that staying inside and finding another escape route is safer than facing whoever is outside. She remembers the green door but does not dare open it without knowing what will happen. Instead, she asks Won-hyuk to find the key first. From a distance, she watches him carefully tighten the bandage around his injured hand. The fresh canned food still makes the bunker suspicious. Even so, Seo-woo begins to realize that Won-hyuk is not trying to hurt her. His earlier actions and the food he provided make his intentions even harder to understand. For now, she remains close to him because the outside world is far more dangerous. The image of a bloody hand holding a knife flashes back into Seo-woo's memories. She also remembers Won-hyuk explaining that he came here to escape his father. Both of them are clearly carrying painful scars from the past. Somehow, these two broken children have ended up hiding together in the same living hell. Seo-woo stands near the cold concrete wall while Won-hyuk tightens the bandage around his wrist. His movements are firm, almost as if he is trying to control the wounds that refuse to disappear. He then stares at the medicine shelf in silence. Painful memories begin resurfacing across his troubled expression. Won Hyuk suddenly turns around as if trying to escape the pressure surrounding him. His face becomes tense and sweat appears across his skin. The image of a bloody hand gripping a knife returns again. Whatever happened in the past still weighs heavily on this guy. Meanwhile, school is finally ending for the day. Students crowd the hallways as they line up and head toward the stairs. Ji-won suddenly stops after hearing part of a friend's unfinished story. Her expression becomes sharp and calculating. Ji-won tells her friends to go ahead and wait at the school gate. She stays behind, apparently preparing to search for answers on her own. But before she can leave, the homeroom teacher calls her from the hallway. Ji-won's expression immediately shows irritation. The teacher approaches and asks whether Ji-won knows which friend Seo-woo is staying with. She explains that Seo-woo's guardian only vaguely mentioned that the girl was at a friend's house. Ji-won becomes angry and insists that she has already said she knows nothing. She then walks away while coldly dismissing all of Seo-woo's problems. But the teacher suddenly raises a shocking possibility. She asks whether Seo-woo could be with Ji-won Hyuk. Ji-won immediately freezes when she hears that Won Hyuk is also absent from school. She quickly hides her reaction and coldly insists that the place definitely does not belong to him. Ji-won quickly walks down the stairs to escape the teacher's questions. She knows Seo-woo has nowhere else to go except Won Hyuk's place, so she decides to keep everything a secret from everyone. Meanwhile, Seo-woo uses a black pen to sketch the bunker layout on the wall. She realizes she has already searched almost every corner without finding the key. Her only remaining option may be breaking the door handle. But then she suddenly notices another strange drawing on the concrete wall. It looks like it could be a ladder leading to a hidden escape route. Won Hyuk suddenly appears behind her and asks what she is doing. Seo-woo jumps in fear and quickly claims she is only searching through the old belongings for clues. But when she looks at him closely, she notices how exhausted he seems. His pale face is covered in sweat, making it clear something is wrong. Won Hyuk brushes it off and acts as if his gloomy face has always looked this way. Seo-woo does not believe him because she can clearly see the difference. She reaches out and moves his messy hair aside, exposing the wounds underneath. The sudden closeness leaves both of them completely stunned. Won Hyuk's eyes waver as he feels the unexpected warmth from his old friend. He slowly touches the place where Seo-woo's hand had been. For a moment, the two simply stand there in the cold concrete hallway. The atmosphere suddenly becomes awkward and strangely intimate. Seo-woo quickly steps back and apologizes. She blames herself for slipping back into her old habit of taking care of him. But then Won Hyuk suddenly grabs her wrist. He pulls her hand toward his shoulder, almost as if he needs something to hold on to. In the darkness, Won Hyuk seems desperate to keep Seo-woo close. He slowly raises her hand while his gloomy eyes search for some kind of comfort. The bunker lights suddenly start flickering above them. This awkward moment becomes even stranger as they remain connected in the darkness. Won Hyuk quietly hints that everything seems ready to fall apart. Seo-woo becomes confused by his strange words. She quickly pulls her hand away and complains about how tightly he was holding her. But then he suddenly asks whether she is hungry. Won Hyuk's expression softens as he notices that Seo-woo has barely eaten all day. He points out the box of canned food he brought earlier. His sudden concern makes Seo-woo even more suspicious of his strange behavior. Still, he tells her to eat while he continues searching for the key. Seo-woo quietly leaves the infirmary and continues with her plan. She walks through the ruins while touching the cold concrete wall. What she does not realize is that Won Hyuk is secretly watching her from the darkness. Once she leaves, his face becomes even more exhausted and lonely. Cold sweat continues running down Won Hyuk's pale face as he struggles with intense pain. Then, something dark begins spreading through the crack beneath the door. A black liquid slowly covers the ground as heavy footsteps move through it. The darkness quickly swallows the bunker, turning the place into a terrifying trap. Meanwhile, a news anchor on television frantically reports a horrifying incident outside. Seo-woo's aunt sits beside her husband with an anxious expression. She keeps staring at the screen while desperately trying to contact Seo-woo, but Ji-won suddenly snatches the phone from her mother's hand. Ji-won firmly orders her mother to stop trying to contact Seo-woo. Her father also looks irritated by the situation. He tells his wife to enjoy her day off and sarcastically suggests that she is probably more comfortable now that Seo-woo is gone. He complains that Seo-woo's quiet behavior always makes the house feel uncomfortable. The mother remains worried because Seo-woo has been unreachable for 2 days. Her phone has also been completely unavailable since the previous day. Ji-won dismisses the concern and insists that Seo-woo is simply staying with a friend. She warns her mother that showing too much concern will only make Seo-woo become more attached to the family. The mother looks at Ji-won suspiciously and brings up Seo-woo's painful past. A memory of a cold funeral suddenly appears. Adults dressed in black stand silently while young Seo-woo desperately holds onto someone's coat. She is just a little girl trying to find some remaining family support after losing everything. Ji-won angrily brings up how Seo-woo used to cling to her mother like a burden. She bitterly claims that if her mother had kicked Seo-woo out sooner, she would not have needed to take such drastic action. Her mother can only lower her head in helpless guilt. Despite her worried questions, Ji-won walks away and forbids her from contacting Seo-woo. Outside in the rain, Ji-won repeatedly flicks her lighter while trying to light a cigarette. The flame keeps going out, making her even more irritated. She stands beside a filthy garbage pile and complains about everything around her. Then, someone quietly approaches from behind. A strange hand suddenly reaches out with a flame toward Ji-won's cigarette. She turns around in surprise and finds Seong-chan standing behind her. The flame briefly lights up the gloomy alley and reveals his calculating expression. Seong-chan casually mentions that his own lighter has also run out of gas, marking the beginning of a mysterious conversation. Sing-chan casually mentions that his lighter has also run out of gas. Ji-won immediately becomes suspicious of the stranger standing in front of her. Meanwhile, Sing-chan studies her face and tries to remember where he has seen her before. Suddenly, he recognizes her but gets stuck trying to remember the rest of her name. Ji-won only gives him a tired look after his awkward attempt. Nearby, the old military bunker still stands on the hill behind a barbed wire fence. Deep underground, Seo-woo slowly sits up on the sofa. The darkness around her makes the bunker feel even more lonely. Seo-woo looks around the infirmary and notices Won-hyuk sleeping on the bed. She is surprised because he usually stays awake to watch over her. His hand covers his forehead while sweat pours down his pale face. Something is clearly wrong with him. Seo-woo quickly gets up and approaches Won-hyuk. She calls his name and realizes he may be trapped inside a nightmare. She shakes him urgently, but the cold sweat keeps pouring down his face. Won-hyuk suddenly wakes up in panic and grabs his collar as if he cannot breathe. Outside, hurried footsteps splash through the rain. Song-chan wonders why Ji-won recognized him so quickly, but she immediately warns him not to touch her. She sarcastically explains that everyone in the neighborhood knows his reputation because of the violent incident from years ago. Then, she sends him away. Ji-won throws the lighter back at Song-chan before leaving. He laughs sarcastically and mocks the fake kindness of the wealthy girl. As Ji-won's figure disappears into the rain, Song-chan quietly repeats her name. It becomes clear that this guy is already treating her like a new piece in his plan. Ji-won suddenly stops beneath her transparent umbrella. She turns around and asks what Song-chan is planning. He touches the old scar on the back of his neck and hints that there is a reason he has returned to this neighborhood. Ji-won immediately dismisses him and mocks his strange behavior. Seong-chan ignores the insult and says he also has something to ask. Standing in the rain, he directly asks whether Seo is currently with Won-hyuk. Ji-won's expression instantly changes. She grips the umbrella handle tightly and insists that the two of them cut ties a long time ago. Song-chan gives a slight smirk. He points out that their relationship ended badly, but the real truth is still being hidden. He suggests that the truth may be acceptable for Seo, but it certainly is not for Won-hyuk. Ji-won becomes even more suspicious and demands to know what he really means. Back inside the bunker, Won-hyuk remains unconscious with his hand resting against his forehead. Seo-woo suddenly notices him struggling again. She quickly kneels beside him and calls his name as the nightmare continues. His body is drenched in sweat while the painful memories refuse to let him go. Sing-chan continues revealing more information to Ji-won. He makes it clear that even if Seo wants to end everything, Won-hyuk cannot simply escape the painful cycle surrounding him. Ji-won's eyes become sharp as she listens carefully. Every new detail makes her suspicions grow stronger. Then, Won-hyuk suddenly wraps his arms tightly around Seo. He clings to her like she is the only thing keeping him alive. His exhausted head rests against her shoulder as years of suppressed pain finally break through. Above them, a rough hand grabs the edge of the bunker trapdoor. The dangerous man has finally reached the entrance, but inside, Seo-woo remains focused on the fragile boy holding on to her. She remembers how she once feared Won-hyuk when he violently grabbed her jaw. Now, seeing him trembling in her arms, she realizes that he looks just like the frightened version of herself from the past. Seo-woo hesitates for a moment as sympathy takes over. She finally decides that she cannot leave Won-hyuk alone with his pain. Her hand slowly moves toward him. Then, she wraps both arms around his back and pulls him into a tight embrace. Won-hyuk's exhausted eyes slowly open in surprise. He seems unable to believe that Seo-woo is actually comforting him. For the first time, the two broken children simply hold on to each other. Meanwhile, the danger above them continues getting closer. Seo-woo tightly hugs Won-hyuk, giving him a rare moment of comfort. The gentle gesture leaves him completely stunned, and his face turns red as he rests his head on her shoulder. But the moment quickly ends when Won-hyuk suddenly pushes her away. Seo-woo cries out in panic, shocked by his fierce reaction. Won-hyuk sits on a wooden crate and quietly apologizes for suddenly hugging her. He explains that he only did it because he saw her trembling. Seo-woo says she is fine but immediately asks if he was suffering from another nightmare. She notices his face is still covered in sweat and tries to wipe it away. Won-hyuk quickly turns his head and hides behind his messy hair. He insists that he is filthy and tells her not to touch him. His reaction creates another painful distance between the two of them. Seo-woo then notices fresh blood soaking through the bandage on his arm. She immediately suspects that the appearance of his father caused Won-hyuk's current condition. Looking at his exhausted face, she realizes he has barely rested since entering the bunker. Won-hyuk finally admits that the murderer keeps appearing in his dreams. The memories of blood and the knife continue haunting him like a curse. Won-hyuk weakly says Seo-woo's name while she points out the serious wound on his arm. Instead of accepting her concern, he coldly asks why she suddenly cares so much. The bunker becomes tense again as the two struggle to understand each other. Meanwhile, Ji-won walks through the heavy rain with her transparent umbrella. Ji-won suddenly stops and looks back at the old house. Her sharp eyes remain hidden behind her glasses as she carefully watches the deserted place. She finally reaches the doorstep and stands there in silence. Then, Song-chan appears and asks whether Won-hyuk being with Seo-woo really matters to her. Seong-chan places a hand on the railing and reveals that he has unfinished business with Won-hyuk. He explains that this is the reason he went out of his way to find him. After watching Ji-won's reaction, he realizes she may not know where the two are either. This only makes her even more suspicious of his intentions. Ji-won silently curses Song-chan for being an irritating stranger with questionable motives. She wonders why he came all the way to this neighborhood and worries that he could spread rumors about Seo. Then, Song-chan suddenly asks whether she has ever visited Won-hyuk's house. Ji-won becomes visibly startled when he reveals that he already went there. Song-chan explains that he repeatedly rang the doorbell but received no response. The house remained completely silent behind the cold iron gate. Ji-won listens carefully while trying to figure out what this means. Logically, she believes Seo-woo should be hiding inside that house. But now, panic starts creeping into Ji-won's mind. Seo-woo is not the type to casually sleep somewhere strange without telling anyone. A dark suspicion begins forming as the situation becomes increasingly abnormal. The rain continues falling while Ji-won's fear grows stronger. Suddenly, the iron door shifts with a dry sound. A hidden entrance slowly opens and reveals deep darkness inside. Ji-won cautiously looks through the gap and realizes she may be standing before a terrifying truth. The deserted house becomes even more unsettling beneath the heavy rain. Ji-won hesitantly steps inside after realizing the door is not locked. She decides that waiting outside will not reveal anything, so she must investigate for herself. Painful memories from the past suddenly return as she stands in the gloomy room. She grips the doorknob with trembling hands, hoping she has misunderstood everything. But the lock clicks behind her, and that tiny sound makes the situation feel final. The dim lights begin flickering across the dark room. Ji-won stands alone as the silence becomes almost unbearable. Whatever she is about to discover, there may be no easy way back. Back inside the bunker, Won-hyuk lowers his head in exhaustion. He asks whether Seo-woo is afraid of his dark secrets and disturbing presence. He tells her not to give him this strange attention and to treat him coldly like she always did. His words create another painful wall between them. Seo-woo watches Won-hyuk with a deeply worried expression. She calls his name and tries to tell him what she truly feels. But Won-hyuk simply walks away and says he needs to wash the blood from his body. Seo-woo is left standing alone in the cold bunker. Won-hyuk reaches the sink and lets the water run over his hands. He stares into the mirror and suddenly sees a horrifying vision of blood covering his face. The wound on his arm is washed under the running water. Soon, the clear water turns deep red as blood swirls toward the drain. Won-hyuk's eyes widen in shock as the bloody water disappears into the sink. The terrifying illusion makes it feel as though the past is returning to consume him. His body remains frozen as he watches the red liquid vanish. Meanwhile, in another place, Do-won suddenly covers her mouth to stop herself from screaming after witnessing a horrifying truth. Seowoo looks toward the gloomy entrance and considers searching for a flashlight in the medical room. Meanwhile, Won-hyuk suddenly pushes the door open and rushes outside. The lights are gone, and his uneasy expression shows that something feels seriously wrong. He stands at the doorway, breathing heavily with his blood-stained shirt hanging open. A call for Nam Se-woo echoes through the deserted hallway. Garbage is scattered everywhere under the thick darkness. Won-hyuk quickly searches through an iron shelf until his hand finds a flashlight buried among the old junk. He switches it on, and the beam instantly cuts through the darkness. Won-hyuk raises the flashlight and searches every corner for Se-woo. His expression becomes more tense with every second. Suddenly, he spins around as if he senses something behind him. The iron door lets out a harsh screech, making the empty bunker feel even more unsettling. Won-hyuk rushes past piles of old tables and chairs. His dark shadow moves across the basement as the flashlight sweeps through the gloomy room. His heavy breathing echoes down the hallway while he desperately searches for Se-woo. Finally, he stops and leans against the concrete wall, completely exhausted and covered in sweat. The flashlight moves into an empty meeting room with a large white projector screen. Nothing is there except dust and silence. Won-hyuk lowers his head as the situation starts looking worse. Suddenly, Se-woo softly calls his name from behind the door. Won-hyuk immediately turns around and walks toward her. Seo-in looks at his exhausted back and asks if he actually came looking for her. Without warning, Won-hyuk grabs her shoulders tightly. He coldly accuses her of thinking only about ways to escape this place. The two walk silently through the gloomy hallway. Rusty pipes twist across the ceiling above them. Won-hyuk keeps his eyes hidden behind his messy black hair as he notices Se-woo becoming more determined. Soon, they stop in front of the cold iron gate. Se-woo decides that waiting for the key is pointless. She suggests breaking the door down instead. Since this is their only possible exit, she insists that smashing it open is their best chance. When Won-hyuk hesitates, Se-woo makes it clear that she will do it herself if he refuses. Won-hyuk stands there with a sorrowful expression. He looks like he is struggling with the harsh reality waiting beyond the door. Then, a heavy hammer comes crashing down onto the lock. The latch finally breaks, removing the last barrier between them and the outside world. As a small beam of light appears through the broken door, Se-woo stands quietly beside Won-hyuk. She believes the only reason she cares about him is because they are trapped together. Once they escape, she expects everything to return to normal. They will simply go back to ignoring each other like strangers. The flashlight sweeps across several old industrial machines. Se-woo suddenly freezes when she sees the huge equipment hidden inside the darkness. She looks around in confusion, realizing this place may actually be an engine room. But then, the truth becomes even more shocking. The broken iron door does not lead outside. Instead, it opens toward a weedy riverbank surrounded by water. Se-woo slowly steps backward into the darkness. She desperately tries to convince herself that what she sees cannot be real. Her feet stumble as she realizes that a bunker this large should have more than one exit. Won-hyuk's silhouette flashes through her mind as her last hope begins to disappear. She reaches toward the empty air and desperately wonders if they are going to remain trapped here forever. With no other option, she silently hopes for a miracle. Suddenly, Won-hyuk grabs Se-woo by the wrist and pulls her back. Both of them tumble onto the rubble, and Se-woo hits the cold basement floor hard. Won-hyuk remains standing with blood pouring from his injured shoulder. His dark silhouette looks like a warning of the disaster still coming. He then pulls the exhausted Se-woo close to him. The situation has completely fallen apart, and there seems to be no way out. Won-hyuk finally accepts the possibility that nobody is coming to save them. If this continues, both of them could disappear without anyone even knowing. Se-woo rests her head against Won-hyuk's chest and weakly asks what they should do next. Won-hyuk's eyes sink into deep sadness as the pain of his past continues to weigh on him. His trembling hand drops toward the cold floor as he struggles to face their situation. But he refuses to completely give up. His empty gaze moves toward the silent row of chairs in the dark room. Then, he notices an old warning sign beside an iron ladder. This makes him realize that another emergency exit must exist somewhere inside the bunker. As debris continues falling around them, Won-hyuk pulls Se-woo tightly against his chest and firmly insists that a real exit is still out there. Se-woo's eyes widen as a faint sense of hope returns. She quickly crawls across the rubble and demands to know what he has been hiding. Se-woo struggles to hold back her tears as she asks if an exit really exists. She cannot understand why Won-hyuk has been so heartless and deceptive toward her. But as the darkness surrounds them, her last bit of trust completely collapses. She realizes that he may have deliberately trapped her here. Se-woo bitterly mocks herself for ever feeling sorry for him. She once believed their situation was nothing more than a terrible accident. Now, she feels humiliated for wasting her kindness on a liar. The flashlight rolls across the cold floor, leaving only faint light in the terrifying silence. Won-hyuk lies motionless among the ruins. His empty eyes suddenly show a dangerous glint. Seo-woo reaches for his collar in anger, but Won-hyuk quickly grabs her hand and stops her. The tension between them instantly becomes unbearable. Seo-woo insists that she saw the blue door and accuses Won-hyuk of hiding a dark secret. Won-hyuk weakly denies that any exit exists, but Seo-woo immediately snaps and refuses to believe another one of his lies. She makes it clear that she will never fall for his trap again. Their shadows stretch across the cold wall as Seo-woo's anger turns into deep disappointment. She cannot believe she trusted Won-hyuk despite everything that happened in the past. Suddenly, Won-hyuk springs up and uses his strength to pin her against the rubble. He tightly holds her trembling wrists as the basement becomes even more suffocating. Won-hyuk lowers his head, hiding his miserable expression. His heavy breathing shows that he is struggling with severe emotional trauma. Seo-woo desperately begs him to let her escape this hellhole, but Won-hyuk gives her nothing except a cold rejection. Then, Won-hyuk reaches behind himself and asks if she really wants to know why he keeps her here. Seo-woo suddenly notices a folding knife falling beside her hand. She freezes as Won-hyuk continues holding her down. Then he reveals the horrifying truth. Won-hyuk tells Seo-woo that the man is dead. He admits that he is the one who killed him. The memory of his father's lifeless body lying in the dark room returns to him like a nightmare that refuses to disappear. He then asks if she finally understands why he had to imprison her. Won-hyuk warns that if he lets Seo-woo leave, she will tell everyone about him. His murderous past could become a rumor spreading throughout the world. His eyes fill with an extreme desperation as he forces her to give up on escaping. He wants her to remain trapped in the darkness with him. Meanwhile, Ji-won suddenly covers her mouth when a terrible smell reaches her. She looks around the ruined house and asks about the strong stench filling the room. Her eyes then fall on a bottle of cleaning bleach sitting on the table. This makes her suspect that someone may have used chemicals to hide something. Ji-won soon discovers a mysterious suitcase hidden underneath the table. She stares at it in confusion, wondering why it is here. Before she can investigate further, a dark figure silently approaches from behind. A strange noise makes Ji-won turn around in panic, and she freezes when she sees her aunt standing there. The woman stands motionless in the darkness while wearing rubber gloves. Her exhausted face looks cold and unreadable. She casually explains that she has been cleaning, while the strong smell of bleach fills the room. Then she removes her gloves and brings up their old childhood neighborhood friends. The aunt asks if Ji-won has come looking for Won-hyuk. Ji-won is completely stunned by the question. She wonders if the woman has mistaken her for Nam Sa-woo, or if this is some kind of psychological trap. The woman then disappears deeper into the darkness and casually mentions that Won-hyuk rarely comes to this house anyway. Ji-won remains frozen in place. She awkwardly explains that she and her cousin are not as close as her aunt seems to believe. The aunt turns away and admits that if they are no longer close, then all her assumptions were wrong. She adds that Won-hyuk always came and went from the house as if he were the real owner. Ji-won feels a chill from her aunt's strange behavior. She quickly apologizes for coming without warning and starts to leave. The woman remains by the doorway, silently watching every step Ji-won takes. Then, she coldly asks what Ji-won still plans to do and orders her to leave immediately. Ji-won walks through the iron gate and into the pouring rain. Her lonely figure disappears into the wet street as her paranoia continues to grow. Suddenly, she stops in the middle of the empty road. A terrible memory from that fateful day suddenly rushes back into her mind. Ji-won stares into the empty void, wondering if she really witnessed a crime all those years ago. Meanwhile, deep inside the basement, Won-hyuk tightly grips Seo-woo's wrists. She struggles desperately, but he keeps his cold expression. Their fight quickly turns into a dangerous confrontation. Suddenly, a sharp knife swings through the darkness. Seo-woo grabs it and points the blade directly at Won-hyuk. Her eyes fill with tears and panic as she demands that he let her go, but Won-hyuk simply stares at the blade without showing any fear. Seo-woo threatens to attack him if he refuses to back away, but Won-hyuk casually tells her to do whatever she wants. He claims that he has nothing left to lose. Then, the exhausted young man drops to his knees and grips the cold floor tightly. Won-hyuk turns his back and coldly insists that he will never let Seo-woo leave. He tells her to give up already. Seo-woo freezes when the blade touches his skin. Instead of moving away, Won-hyuk deliberately exposes his neck to the knife as if he is ready to die. His lifeless expression leaves Seo-woo horrified. She quickly pulls back, refusing to act on the desperate urge to strike him. The seriousness of his actions makes her realize that he truly does not care about his own life, but she still searches desperately for another way to escape. Then, a memory suddenly comes back to Seowu. She remembers Won-hyuk carefully treating her wound in the infirmary. She also remembers him gently touching her face to calm her fear. Those memories make her hatred toward him begin to shake. Both of them remain trapped in painful silence as their patience slowly disappears. Suddenly, the knife slips from Seowoo's hand and rolls across the floor. She can only sit there helplessly as Won-hyuk collapses forward and grabs her. Seowoo closes her eyes and groans in pain as the blade comes dangerously close to his neck. The struggle becomes even more violent, and fresh blood starts dripping onto the floor. Won-hyuk holds Seowoo tightly while staring into her frightened eyes. A deep cut on Seowoo's arm begins to bleed from the struggle. Yet even now, Won-hyuk refuses to let go of her. Won-hyuk finally takes the knife away from her. He demands that she hand it over before things become even more dangerous. Then, surprisingly, he uses a piece of white cloth to wrap the wound on her hand. Despite his cold behavior, he carefully treats her injury. In the middle of the ruined basement, Won-hyuk kneels and quietly bandages Seowoo's wound. His bare back is covered with bruises and scratches. The scars reveal just how much pain he has endured. For a moment, the violent confrontation falls into complete silence. The two lonely souls eventually lie beside each other in the suffocating darkness. At this point, they have almost nothing left except each other. Seowoo wakes from a series of broken memories and notices Won-hyuk's bloody bare back. Nearby, the bloody pocket knife lies on the floor like evidence of everything that just happened. Won-hyuk sits beside Seowoo, breathing heavily as the struggle finally ends. Seowoo immediately pulls back, still watching him carefully. Won-hyuk lowers his head from exhaustion. Then, he coldly tells her to pack her things and follow him. Won-hyuk reaches for a rusty iron trapdoor and pushes it open with all his strength. He kneels beside the hatch as a hidden passage finally appears. Seowoo watches suspiciously from behind, but she soon realizes that this is the emergency exit Won-hyuk has been secretly protecting all along. Below the old iron stairs is a pitch-black abyss. Warning signs around the entrance make the hidden passage look extremely dangerous. Seowoo looks at the massive engine room and wonders how someone like Won-hyuk could even know about such an advanced shelter. Suddenly, a dry metallic sound echoes through the darkness. Won-hyuk grabs his flashlight and starts climbing down the rusty stairs. He tells Seowoo to watch her step and stay close behind him. Seowoo holds another flashlight in her mouth as she carefully climbs into the deep passage. When she finally reaches the bottom, Won-hyuk is already waiting in the dark corridor. But then, Won-hyuk suddenly holds out a black strip of cloth. Seowoo freezes when he orders her to cover her eyes. She is confused by the strange request and wants to know why she needs a blindfold. Won-hyuk then explains that sudden exposure to bright light after staying in darkness for too long could severely damage her eyesight. Won-hyuk stands quietly in the darkness after explaining the danger. He tries to remain calm despite everything that has happened. For now, he can only hope that things will not become as terrible as he fears. Meanwhile, Seowoo tightly covers her eyes with the black cloth and grips her bag. She quickly follows Won-hyuk because she fears being locked up again. Won-hyuk takes her trembling hands and carefully leads her forward. He warns her about the water below and tells her not to panic. As the iron door screeches open, Seowoo realizes they are finally leaving the suffocating basement. She steps barefoot into the freezing water while holding onto Won-hyuk's arm. The unstable ground makes it hard for her to balance, especially with the heavy bag in her hand. Seeing this, Won-hyuk offers to carry it for her. Seowoo hesitantly agrees, but suddenly Won-hyuk picks her up in his arms. The unexpected move leaves her completely shocked. He simply tells her to stay still because they do not have much distance left. Seowoo protests while Won-hyuk keeps carrying her through the darkness. Thinking the outside light will not be too bright, she reaches toward the blindfold. But things suddenly change when a powerful beam of light pierces through the cloth. The sudden brightness hurts her eyes badly, forcing her to shut them. Seowoo panics as she wonders what is happening. She realizes they may have finally stepped out of the deep basement. Won-hyuk continues carrying her away from the darkness. He takes her into the lush green forest outside. His face is covered in sweat and sadness as he carefully walks forward with her in his arms. His bare feet press against the soft grass with every heavy step. Even though he looks completely exhausted, he refuses to stop. Seowoo rests her head against his shoulder while the fresh smell of wet grass surrounds them. The scent reminds Seowoo of summer rain. It also feels strangely familiar because it is the same scent she has always associated with Won-hyuk. This realization suddenly brings a wave of intense emotions. Her eyes remain covered, but she can still feel herself becoming overwhelmed. Won-hyuk gently places her back on the ground. Then he tells her that they have arrived and that she must find her own way home from there. Won-hyuk remains standing behind her, silently watching her figure. His sorrowful eyes stay fixed on Se-woo as if he wants to remember her forever. He raises his trembling hand to touch her one last time, but the pain makes him pull it back. His name lingers like a final farewell. Se-woo remains blindfolded and turns her head slightly. She asks if Won-hyuk is coming back with her, but the young man stays completely silent. The warmth of his hand slowly disappears into the air. Si-woo's old shoes remain firmly planted on the grass. After so many dark days, she finally stands outside as a free girl again. Se-woo slowly removes the black blindfold. She squints against the bright sunlight and tries to adjust to the outside world. But when she looks around the empty alley, she immediately calls out Won-hyuk's name. There is no answer anywhere. Seo looks across the empty yard in shock, wondering when her friend disappeared. It feels as if Won-hyuk vanished in an instant, leaving behind only a huge emptiness. Seo-woo stands alone beside the gray brick wall. Even after escaping, she still feels lost and uneasy. She turns around nervously because the basement seems to remain like a phantom following her. She slowly walks forward with trembling legs. The horror she has just experienced is still fresh in her mind. Looking at the tightly packed houses around her, she tries to accept that this is finally the real world. Siwoo hesitantly reaches toward the door keypad. Her hand pauses before she finally crosses into the place that is supposed to be safe. Once inside, she starts worrying about how long she has been missing and what she will say about her strange absence from school. Suddenly, joyful laughter comes from inside the house. The sound makes Sewoo freeze because it feels completely different from the darkness she has just escaped. She slowly enters while tightly holding onto her personal bag. Her relatives barely react to her return. Her aunt calmly sits there eating fruit and laughing as if nothing happened. Sewoo stands alone in the living room, realizing that her disappearance seems to mean nothing to them. The loud sound of someone biting into fruit fills the room. It makes the silence around Seo feel even more uncomfortable. She tightly grips the handles of her paper bag as her hope for family affection slowly disappears. Her aunt casually asks if Seo had a good trip. Seo remains frozen with a pale face as cold sweat runs down her body. The strange and cold reaction from her aunt only makes the situation more uncomfortable. During the meal, the aunt happily serves food to Jiwon. At the same time, she completely ignores Seo sitting nearby. Then she suddenly turns towards Seo and asks if the food is good. Seo can barely respond because of her anxiety. Her uncle coldly tells the aunt to leave her alone. Seo quietly remains at the table, feeling bitter about the strange sarcasm surrounding her. She lowers her head and tries to endure the uncomfortable atmosphere. Even after returning home, the memories of what happened still haunt her. The aunt then brings Seo a bowl of soup. Seo refuses and says she can handle everything herself. But suddenly, a rough hand grabs her arm. The unexpected touch makes Seo tremble in pain and panic. The aunt looks directly at her with cold, sharp eyes. A strange smile appears on her face, making the atmosphere even more terrifying. Turns out, Seowoo's return home may be the beginning of another nightmare. The aunt keeps smiling mysteriously as she asks whether Seowoo wants more toppings in her soup. Seowoo stays silent for a moment before quietly saying she is fine, but despite trying to remain calm, her trembling body reveals just how frightened she really is. Seo quietly walks across the cold floor as her footsteps echo through the house. The suffocating atmosphere makes her nervous, so she covers her mouth while worrying that her relatives may notice something strange. Soon, she reaches her tiny room with a bunk bed and a messy desk. The cramped room makes Seo stop for a moment. She looks around as if seeing it for the first time and realizes how small and suffocating it feels. Then she picks up her fully charged phone and discovers that she has been missing for 4 whole days. Memories of Won-hyuk's care suddenly come rushing back. Those 4 days feel much longer because of everything she has experienced with him. When she notices only one missed call from her aunt, she finally understands why nobody seemed worried about her disappearance. Suddenly, frantic knocking comes from the door. Seo immediately turns around with a frightened expression. Jiwon appears at the doorway and stares directly at her. Jiwon bluntly asks if Seo has been hiding at Won-hyuk's house all these days. The question hits the mark and Seo's face instantly turns pale. Jiwon then claims that the murderer's son is the only place where Seo could have been staying. She becomes suspicious of their strange relationship and starts insulting Seo, but Seo suddenly screams in denial and stops her. Cold sweat covers her face as she desperately tries to hide her fear. Won-hyuk's image suddenly flashes through Seo-woo's mind. She also remembers his horrifying confession about killing his own father. Seo-woo lowers her head and awkwardly claims that she has never even entered that house. Ji-won watches her closely with obvious contempt. It is clear that she does not believe Seo-woo's awkward explanation. Before leaving, she only warns Seo not to get involved with Ji-won Hyul. But Ji-won suddenly enters the room again. She sarcastically asks if Seo has simply been visiting some friends. Then she grabs the paper bag and turns it upside down, sending all of Seo's belongings crashing onto the floor. Si-woo looks up in shock as her things scatter everywhere. The insult hurts her deeply once again. Ji-won coldly tells her that nobody would willingly become friends with someone like her. She tells Seo-woo to stop imagining that she has real relationships with people. Then she notices the bandage on Seo-woo's arm and mocks it as another cheap attempt to get attention. Seo-woo says nothing and quietly begins picking up her belongings. Ji-won watches her silently with disgust. She sighs at Seo-woo's submissive behavior and calls her life pathetic and humiliating. Then she turns around and leaves the room. The room becomes completely silent after Ji-won leaves. Seo sits alone beside the bunk bed in the darkness. She curls herself up while Ji-won's cruel words continue repeating in her mind. Later, Seo walks down the faded street with a heavy expression. Even though she is back in the real world, her mind remains trapped inside that dark basement. Soon, she returns to school and stands silently in the classroom. Everyone questions the reason behind her sudden disappearance. Seo-woo lowers her head and gives no real explanation. Then she drops her head onto the desk while the other students laugh loudly around her. The familiar school suddenly feels completely unfamiliar. Si-woo sits alone on the deserted steps and listens to students gossiping nearby. They still look at her as if she is some kind of ghost. Suddenly, a spoon crashes onto the floor with a sharp clatter. The noise breaks through Seo-woo's thoughts. In the crowded cafeteria, she sits completely isolated while watching the spoon roll across the floor. Seo-woo slowly reaches down to pick it up. But the simple object suddenly makes everything around her feel distant. She begins questioning how she used to live and what kind of sadness had always filled her life. She wonders if she always had to carefully calculate every action and every small movement. Then she looks at her distorted reflection in the spoon. Surprisingly, she realizes that she cannot remember much about her own past. That night, Seo walks alone through the dark streets. She becomes afraid that everyone will soon notice how different she has become. So she tries to remember exactly how she used to live before the nightmare at the shelter. Slowly, fragments of her memories begin returning. She sees neat white shoes lined up and remembers her detached school days. She also remembers exhausting hours in the auditorium where her classmates pushed her away and told her not to depend on them. Then another strange image suddenly appears. A soldier wearing a gas mask stands in front of her memory. Seo-woo becomes confused about why an old air raid drill is suddenly coming back so strongly. She remembers complaining about standing for too long. Her thin hands tightly grip the edge of her shirt as she tries to calm herself. Among the chaotic crowd, she notices an old friend who is also silently suffering through the same uncomfortable moment. Then the announcement comes that the class is short of one gas mask. The shortage feels like a warning of the loneliness Seo is about to face again. But before she can think further, dry clapping pulls her back to reality. The teacher holds up a gas mask and explains that the students must practice in pairs because there are not enough masks. Everyone immediately starts looking for a partner. Seo-woo remains standing alone, filled with anxiety. She watches Ji-won quickly pair up with another student. Once again, Seo-woo is left outside the familiar circle. Her feet remain frozen in place as the loneliness around her becomes impossible to ignore. Looking toward the stage, Seo-woo realizes that her current situation is exactly like the painful memories from her childhood. The teacher then notices that one student is still standing alone. Because the class has an odd number of students, Seo-woo is the only one without a partner. The teacher has no choice but to ask the neighboring class for help. Surprisingly, that class also has one student who is left without a partner. The teacher suggests pairing the two lonely students together for the drill. Seo turns her head with a startled expression. She becomes curious about the stranger who is about to become her partner. And as the memories continue unfolding, Won-hyuk suddenly appears in her mind, struggling to adjust a gas mask during that very same drill. Won-hyuk realizes that this moment becomes an unforgettable turning point in his life. A pitch-black gas mask covers his face and hides the loneliness of a child rejected by everyone around him. In the middle of that crowded auditorium, Seo is the only person who reaches out to him. The teacher nervously looks at the two children standing together. She worries that being seen with someone like Won Hyuk could cause trouble for Seo, but Seo firmly shows that she does not care. As the other students split into pairs, these two lonely children stand facing each other. Seo suddenly smiles brightly and asks if Won Hyuk really kept his promise to come to school. But Won Hyuk gives her nothing but silence from behind the glass of his mask. Seo gets annoyed and stamps her foot. She demands to know why he refuses to answer her. Then she calls Won Hyuk's name while two male classmates nearby start making cruel jokes. They mock the two of them for supposedly kissing through the gas masks. They also insult Seo Woo for lowering herself by staying with him. Won Hyuk silently takes the insults, realizing that his presence has made Seo Woo another target for the entire school. Suddenly, Won Hyuk turns around and walks away. Seo Woo is left standing there in confusion and quickly asks if something is wrong, but the whispers about the murderer's son start again, as Won Hyuk pushes open the door and leaves. Seo Woo stands at the entrance and watches his lonely back disappear. Meanwhile, Won Hyuk hides behind a green fence in a quiet corner. He curls up alone, trying to escape the cruel world around him. Suddenly, a strange sound makes him look up. His eyes become alert when he notices someone approaching. Surprisingly, Seo Woo appears with a bright smile on her face. She bends down and looks at him like a ray of sunlight entering the darkness. Won Hyuk freezes when she confidently tells him that she has found him. He cannot understand how she manages to discover his secret hiding place. Seo Woo sits across from him among the greenery. She explains that she already knows he would hide somewhere like this. Won Hyuk holds the gas mask in his hand and looks shocked by how well she understands him. He asks why she bothered following him. He also reminds her that staying beside an outcast like him will only make her stand out. Seo Woo simply hugs her knees and points out that she is already getting attention because they were paired together. Then Seo Woo gets straight to the point. Since Won Hyuk ran away, she does not even know how to use the gas mask properly. She demands that he take responsibility and teach her right there instead of constantly running away. She pushes the old gas mask toward him. Seo Woo makes it clear that she will no longer accept his cowardly silence. Won Hyuk looks at her in confusion and asks why she is doing all this. The cruel words from their classmates come rushing back to both of them. The insult about their supposed indirect kiss still hurts like an old wound. Won Hyuk lowers his eyes and struggles to express the painful feelings he has been hiding. He sits behind the bushes and admits how disgusting he feels living in a world filled with prejudice. Suddenly, Seo Woo reaches out and takes the gas mask from his hands. This instantly breaks the suffocating silence between them. Seo Woo puts the mask on and lets Won Hyuk carefully adjust the straps. For a moment, the two children share a rare and peaceful connection. Won Hyuk then reaches toward her and sincerely makes it clear that he does not find her disgusting at all. Won Hyuk freezes while looking at Seo Woo. His eyes tremble because she is the only person showing him genuine concern. Seo Woo notices his flushed face and playfully wonders if the weather is simply too hot. Won Hyuk becomes even more embarrassed. Seo Woo smiles in relief as a small amount of warmth returns to her heart. She lowers her head and walks forward, remembering that she never understood how meaningful those small moments were back then. She looks toward the old brick wall and wonders why Won Hyuk always gave her such a special place in his life. Then she notices a happy family photo sitting on the bookshelf. The picture brings back memories of a warm past that has now disappeared forever. Meanwhile, little Seo Woo sits at her study desk. Her aunt suddenly calls her and asks when she came home in a suspicious tone. She orders Seo Woo to put aside whatever she is doing and come outside to talk. Seo Woo becomes frustrated because she has no idea what happened this time. Her aunt sternly reminds her not to behave that way in front of adults. She also orders Seo Woo to remove her backpack immediately. The conversation soon turns toward Ji-won constantly ignoring Seo Woo at school. The girl becomes frustrated because she has already heard this complaint many times. Her aunt continues quoting the teacher and complains that Seo Woo is always left alone during school activities. Seo Woo quietly stares out the window. Ji-won angrily argues that it is not her fault because the class has an odd number of students. She also questions why her mother keeps blaming her for the situation. From the window, Seo Woo can see Won Hyuk sitting alone on the steps. He looks like a lost child in the middle of the deserted neighborhood. Seo Woo suddenly calls his name loudly. Won Hyuk looks up in surprise. Seo Woo gives him a bright smile that immediately breaks the gloomy atmosphere. She then confidently asks her neighbor to come outside and play with her. Won Hyuk lowers his head with a sad expression. The bandage on his cheek makes his lonely appearance even more painful. He still carries the weight of being rejected by everyone around him. Later, Won-hyuk points out a rocky path that serves as the fastest shortcut from school to home, but he suddenly stops and warns Se-woo not to go deeper into the area. He specifically tells her to stay away from the water because of terrifying ghost rumors surrounding the place. Se-woo hesitates because the safer route is much longer. Won-hyuk remains firm and forces her to take the detour instead. His sharp expression suggests that he is desperately trying to hide something dark. But Se-woo ignores the warning. Her white shoes jump across the moss-covered rocks as she recklessly moves forward. Soon, she rushes through the murky water while the atmosphere around her becomes increasingly suffocating. Si-woo suddenly stops and looks around nervously. A strange feeling of danger begins to take over. Then, without warning, a terrifying figure with glowing eyes appears in front of her. The mysterious figure looks like a demonic entity. In an instant, the familiar world turns into a horrifying nightmare. Little Se-woo suddenly slips while crossing the rocky area. Her small body loses balance, and panic immediately appears on her face. Just when she is about to fall, a strong hand grabs her arm and pulls her back. It is Won-hyuk, standing on the rocks in the middle of the flowing water. He firmly holds Se-woo and reminds her that she nearly got herself into serious danger. Se-woo looks back in confusion while Won-hyuk scolds her for stubbornly following him. The boy's bandaged face turns slightly red from embarrassment. He quickly looks away and tells her to stand properly, but the tense atmosphere soon returns as Won-hyuk sits down heavily on a nearby rock. Se-woo silently watches him with confused eyes. Won-hyuk lowers his head and suddenly asks why she keeps acting so recklessly. He reminds her of all the times she entered places rumored to be haunted and refused to stay away from him. Then Won-hyuk brings up the painful memories of the bullies. He asks why Se-woo still keeps approaching the son of a murderer like him. Se-woo can only lower her head as a heavy silence falls between them. Both children carry wounds that are far too deep for their age. Won-hyuk quietly asks if Seo is actually scared of standing beside someone like him. The sound of water flowing over the rocks makes the silence feel even heavier. Won-hyuk bitterly says that if she is scared, she will eventually leave him just like everyone else. His eyes begin to tremble as his emotions become difficult to control. Then he finally admits that he does not want to lose the only person who still cares about him. Se-woo freezes after hearing those words. Her eyes widen as the confession completely shakes her. For a moment, neither child knows what to say. Back in the present, Se-woo lies exhausted on the sofa inside the dark basement. She longs for someone to genuinely need her existence. Standing among the gray rocks, she searches for a place where she can finally feel that she belongs. Eventually, Se-woo reaches the barbed wire fence hiding the darkest secrets from her past. She looks toward the old trap door on the other side. A strange emotion fills her heart as she realizes she has finally found somewhere she can return to. But that place is also the shelter filled with her worst memories. Se-woo walks slowly beside the fence and admits that she still does not have the courage to enter the basement again. Her fragmented memories keep pulling her back to this place. Yet the darkness surrounding the trapdoor immediately brings back her fear. She knows she cannot simply blame Won-hyuk for the terror engraved inside her heart. Something deep inside still prevents her from opening that door and facing whatever lies beneath it. Later, Se-woo returns to the classroom. She looks completely exhausted, as if everything that happened during her disappearance has drained away the last of her strength. Then her eyes stop at her old wooden desk. Someone else has taken her seat. Se-woo timidly asks to get her chair back, but nobody responds. Her classmates pretend they cannot hear her and mock her as if some ghost has suddenly started talking. Soon, the students begin gossiping about the wound on Se-woo's arm. She lowers her head while gripping her backpack tightly. They cruelly accuse her of hurting herself just to get attention. The insults spread throughout the classroom and hallway. Her scattered belongings become another excuse for everyone to mock her. They call her an attention seeker who is simply putting on a show. Ji-won then smirks and questions whether the usually submissive Se-woo has finally decided to speak up. Surprisingly, Se-woo does not back down this time. She calmly questions whether she does not have the right to say something that is true. The classroom becomes filled with whispers. Everyone continues claiming that Se-woo is deliberately showing her scars to gain sympathy. She stands alone among them, feeling like a completely unwanted presence. Her eyes slowly become empty. She stands silently while the cruel words continue attacking her from every direction. Then a tear finally falls from her eye, showing just how exhausted she has become. Her classmates eventually push the chair back toward her, but even then they warn her never to look at them with resentment again. Se-woo stares at the chair that once belonged to her. Suddenly, the sight brings back memories of how humiliating her life has always been. The overturned chair begins to feel like a symbol of everything she has endured. Her desire to escape all of it starts growing stronger. Siwoo sinks deeper into despair. She stops wanting to fight against the darkness surrounding her. Slowly, she lets herself fall into that hopeless feeling as if she is sinking underwater. The familiar emptiness once again takes over her mind, and this time Siwoo feels herself sinking deeper into it without even trying to escape. Seowu walks across shattered glass in the darkness. The only light barely reveals her trembling old shoes. The military bunker around her is filled with rusty pipes, making the place feel terrifyingly familiar. Her footsteps echo across the damp floor. With every step, Seo becomes more uncertain about the secrets still buried underground. She lowers her head while trying to recover the fragmented memories disappearing into the darkness. Suddenly, a horrifying bloody scene flashes through her mind. She sees an emotionless corpse while strange voices echo inside her head. Seowoo suddenly wakes up breathing heavily, unable to tell where the nightmare ends and reality begins. Back in the classroom, Seowoo rests her exhausted head on the desk. Her small figure looks completely isolated from everyone around her. She stares out the window and wonders why Won-hyuk appeared in her dream in such a strange way. The memory of their tense confrontation returns. Won-hyuk had once told her to do whatever she wanted because he had nothing left to lose. Seo continues staring outside as fragments of those painful memories come rushing back. She remembers Won-hyuk sitting inside his secret hideout with a bandage on his face. He had been shocked that she managed to find him there. Seo had simply known that a lonely person like him would always search for a hidden corner. Now she begins to wonder why they both ended up at that bunker. Maybe they were both carrying the same pain and loneliness. Then the image of a bloody knife suddenly appears like a cruel reminder of the child who was left behind in the darkness. Back in the classroom, the empty desk stands silently in front of Seowoo. It feels like proof that her existence is slowly disappearing from everyone's world. Suddenly, Seowoo jumps up and runs through the dense forest. She races through the trees while breathing heavily. She is desperately trying to reach something before it is too late. Soon, she drops to her knees beside the military trapdoor and searches for another entrance. Seowoo's hands tremble as she searches around the cold iron door, but every attempt leads to nothing. She forces herself back up and runs through the deserted path again. Her heart races as she becomes certain that another secret entrance must be nearby. Saiwoo finally stops beneath the trees and searches the area with determined eyes. Then she notices the entrance to the dark shelter. The deep opening looks like a bottomless pit ready to swallow all the light around it. Surprisingly, the rusty iron door is already wide open. Seowoo freezes as she realizes exactly where she has arrived. Fragments of her childhood memories suddenly return. This is the same place where Won-hyuk once brought her when they were children. Seowoo quickly removes her shoes and grips her belongings tightly. She steps barefoot through the dirty puddles and enters the shelter. Fear surrounds her, but she continues moving deeper inside. She silently hopes that everything she is seeing is only a terrible imagination. Seowoo looks down the stairs leading underground. She desperately wishes that Won-hyuk is not really suffering through the same nightmare, but as she moves deeper, a terrifying presence suddenly makes her eyes widen. In the middle of the dark bunker, Won-hyuk sits completely still. The cold ruins surround his weak body. Seowoo recognizes him immediately and rushes toward her old friend. She touches his shoulder and instantly feels how cold his body has become. Seowoo realizes that Won-hyuk is barely holding on to life. She desperately refuses to accept what is happening. Through her tears, Seowoo uses her own warmth to hold him. She tightly wraps her arms around his thin body and desperately tries to keep him alive. Her fear grows as she begs him to wake up. Then, suddenly, a strong heartbeat echoes through the bunker. Seowoo freezes in shock. The warmth slowly begins returning to Won-hyuk's body. The darkness seems to retreat as his heartbeat becomes stronger. Seo presses her head against his chest and listens to the steady rhythm. In the ruined bunker, the two broken souls cling to each other for a fragile moment of warmth. Seo silently cries in relief. Her old friend has somehow managed to hold on to his life. Then a hazy image from the past suddenly flashes through her mind. The name Nam Seo echoes through the darkness. Seo looks back in confusion, still struggling to understand everything happening around her. When Won-hyuk finally regains consciousness, she quietly asks how he is feeling. But Won-hyuk suddenly pushes her away. His expression becomes guarded, and the atmosphere instantly turns tense. Seo anxiously asks what is wrong, but he only responds with painful silence. She tries to check his wound. Won-hyuk immediately refuses and tells her not to look. But Seowu refuses to back down and reaches toward him, pointing out how terrible his condition had been earlier. Won-hyuk blushes and turns away. He insists that he is still fine while awkwardly saying Seowoo's name. She then notices something strange on the concrete wall. An old ladder is drawn across the wall. Seowoo touches the drawing and freezes in confusion. She begins wondering where it came from and why it feels so familiar. Behind her, Won-hyuk lowers his head and looks at his hands wrapped in gauze. His breathing remains heavy after everything he has just endured. Then he suddenly asks Sewoo when the drawing first appeared. The question breaks the silence inside the bunker. Won-hyuk puts on a shirt to hide his scar-covered back. He bitterly admits that this place drove him crazy a long time ago. Memories of two children standing outside the bunker suddenly return. Seowoo realizes that everything began from that very moment. She looks into the dark corridor and wonders if their lives could have been different without the tragedy that followed. Then she remembers little Sewoo happily drawing on the wall. It is one of the few warm memories left from their childhood. Back in the present, Sewoo stands silently before the same wall, deeply moved by the invisible bond connecting them. But then she sees Won-hyuk's back clearly. Her expression changes as the horrifying truth finally becomes visible. His body is covered with overlapping old and new scars, revealing a past filled with unbearable abuse. Sewoo is shocked when she sees Won-hyuk's terrible condition. Her heart breaks as she remembers holding him before and blaming herself for his suffering. She sincerely offers to apply medicine to the bleeding wounds on his shoulders. But both her hands stop in midair, creating an invisible distance between them. Won-hyuk coldly turns away and refuses her help, saying it will only make her hands dirty. Sewoo lowers her head in disappointment because the wall between them still feels impossible to cross. She remembers everything they have gone through together to reach this place. Yet now, their bond seems to be falling apart. Overcome with emotion, she asks if he is pushing her away because she is no longer someone he can trust. Won-hyuk looks completely exhausted, as if the recent events have drained all his strength. Sewoo keeps asking why he refuses her help, but he only says that he has his own reasons. He then exposes his wounded back and makes it clear that he does not want her touching his blood. Sewoo is stunned by how far he is taking things. But things get worse when Won-hyuk suddenly reveals that he was the one who killed that person. He finally exposes the cruel truth and reveals that the person was his own father. Sewoo freezes as memories of the two children from the past return to her. She realizes that the pain between them may have started from that very moment. The confession leaves her completely shaken. Still, Seowoo gently takes his hand and asks to at least help him wash his hair. She reminds him that his injured arm is also because of her and cannot understand why he keeps carrying everything alone. Won-hyuk silently looks at her, while the distance between the two old friends remains painfully clear. The basket of toiletries sits nearby, ready to help ease their physical pain. Soon, the sound of running water fills the gloomy bunker. Won-hyuk lowers his head and starts washing his hair, trying to recover from his exhaustion. Sewoo timidly helps him, admitting that she has never washed anyone's hair before. Still, she carefully works through his jet black hair and tries to clean it properly. The cool water temporarily eases the tense atmosphere between them. But Sewoo soon notices a problem. Won-hyuk is forced to bend awkwardly, causing his clothes to become soaked. She quickly grabs the collar of his shirt to stop the water from running down his scar-covered back. Sewoo then suggests that he take off his shirt because his current position makes washing his hair nearly impossible. She quietly watches the strange changes in her old friend. Then she notices his ears turning red and teasingly points it out. Won-hyuk trembles slightly because she is watching him so closely. His ears become even redder under the cold water. He quickly splashes water onto his face to hide his embarrassment, making Sewoo panic and apologize because she thinks she scrubbed too hard. The gloomy bathroom suddenly becomes painfully awkward. The two of them stand close together without knowing how to react. Then Won-hyuk abruptly stands up, startling Sewoo. She quickly asks why he suddenly moved like that. With water still dripping from his face, Won-hyuk explains that he only needs to cool himself down and regain his composure. Sewoo notices his soaked uniform and suggests using a hairdryer so they do not catch a cold. But she suddenly realizes the noise could be dangerous at this moment. Sewoo urgently calls Won-hyuk's name to stop him, but he refuses and asks her to hand him the clothes instead. He then takes them outside to dry. The white shirt hangs loosely on the barbed wire fence. It flutters beneath the clear blue sky, looking almost like a symbol of temporary freedom. Sewoo happily points out that the weather is warm and the clothes should dry quickly. Won-hyuk simply sits there with his bare back exposed. He calmly says he already knows because sunlight always reaches inside the bunker. Seo Woo is slightly stunned by how observant he is. She then wonders if that is the only reason he has stayed attached to this dark place for so long. Siwoo adjusts her clothes and looks toward the towering concrete wall. Her expression suddenly changes as she begins considering something reckless. Won-hyuk remains seated in silence. Then he suddenly asks whether she has ever climbed all the way to the top of that wall. Seo Badu does not hesitate for long before stepping onto the iron ladder. As she starts climbing, Won-hyuk immediately becomes alarmed. He stands up and urgently warns her about the danger. Then he rushes forward and orders Nam So-woo to climb back down. But Se-woo stubbornly keeps climbing. Despite her fear, she continues toward the top while looking down at the ruined neighborhood appearing below. Finally, she reaches the top of the wall. A completely new horizon opens before her. Se-woo sits blankly on the edge and realizes the view is exactly what she expected. She looks down into the deep abyss and realizes the height is not enough to end her life. Still standing dangerously close to the edge, Se-woo once again considers the reckless idea of freeing herself from everything. Suddenly, she loses her balance and falls. She panics and blames herself for being careless. Won-hyuk immediately rushes forward and catches her with his body. Both of them crash onto the ground and breathe heavily after the terrifying fall. Won-hyuk angrily reacts to what she has done and painfully questions what would happen to him if she actually died. Siwoo lies there in shock, staring into the empty space. Her mind suddenly returns to an old memory. She sees the image of feet wearing slippers standing at the edge of an abyss. The slipper falls down, leaving the young girl terrified and lost. Seo turns her face away and struggles to hold back her tears. She finally admits that she cannot go through with such a foolish act. The lonely slipper remains on the road, becoming a painful reminder of everything trapping her. Her family's rejection and the humiliation she faced in the classroom still feel like chains around her. Then her eyes move toward the military trapdoor behind the frost-covered barbed wire. A strange light suddenly appears in Seo-woo's eyes. Reckless calculations begin forming in her mind as she stares at the trapdoor. At the same time, the moment of their fall seems to replay in slow motion. Won-hyuk tightly holds Se-woo after the fall. Then, in the middle of that terrifying moment, our boy quietly makes a shocking proposal. He asks whether the two of them should simply stay together like this forever. Won-hyuk wants to hide deep inside the bunker with Seo-woo and forget the harsh reality outside. He wants the abandoned neighborhood to remain silent, as if none of the storms, pain, or scars ever existed. Lying there with a sweat-covered face, he quietly wishes to bury their painful past together. Seo-woo looks up at him with a faint smile and asks what he thinks about escaping reality together. Won-hyuk sits silently in the darkness, clearly struggling with the decision. The image of his blood-covered hand holding a knife suddenly returns, reminding him of the terrible crime he once confessed to. Se-woo carefully watches his expression as he remains trapped in deep sadness. After a long silence, Won-hyuk finally agrees. His answer creates a new bond between the two lonely souls. Looking toward the cold military structure, Won-hyuk decides that they should start their plan immediately. Se-woo begins climbing the rusty iron ladder. Meanwhile, Won-hyuk waits at the top and sternly warns her never to act recklessly like that again. He admits that seeing her sitting on the dangerous edge nearly makes his heart stop. Seo pauses on the ladder, shocked by the genuine concern in his voice. For the first time, she clearly feels how protective he is toward her. She looks up and asks if her earlier action was really that dangerous. Won-hyuk simply nods before allowing her to sit beside him on top of the wall. Seo-woo finds a flat spot and feels safer knowing that this place is not actually a cliff. Won-hyuk also sits beside her instead of climbing back down. Seo-woo wonders why he chooses to stay. He avoids her gaze and explains that she keeps acting on impulse, leaving her slightly startled. From the top of the wall, the ruined neighborhood stretches beneath the clear blue sky. Se-woo swings her legs while taking in the dizzying view. For a moment, she can see almost everything around her. Her gaze moves toward the distant school. She wonders if anyone there can see the two lonely children sitting on the wall. A strange flutter passes through her as she turns toward Won-hyuk. Se-woo softly calls his name. Won-hyuk turns around, his melancholic eyes showing a clear question. She tilts her head and timidly asks him to help fulfill one small wish while they are still together. Suddenly, the scene shifts back to the noisy classroom. The students are busy laughing and making pointless jokes. Meanwhile, Seo-woo sits silently beside the window, completely detached from everything around her. Two girls nearby begin whispering about her with mocking expressions. They complain that she has spent the entire day staring outside like a lifeless person. Their insults become crueler as they claim she has gone crazy and is seeing things that are not real. One girl suddenly kicks the leg of Seo-woo's chair. The small impact breaks the silence around her. Another girl approaches and loudly demands to know what she keeps looking at outside the window. Seo-woo slowly turns her head with a blank expression. She does not respond and simply turns away again. The bullies continue laughing while she sinks deeper into her sadness. Soon, more girls surround Seo-woo's desk. One of them sarcastically asks her friend if Seo-woo has deliberately ignored her. She then kicks the edge of the desk and angrily asks if Seo-woo is deaf. The bully keeps demanding to know what is so interesting outside the window. The surrounding students begin whispering about how Nam Seo-woo acts as if nobody else exists. The situation quickly becomes even more hostile. The bully suddenly slams her hand onto the desk. Seo-woo jolts as the girl screams that she is talking directly to her. Seo-woo's eyes widen in terror, as if those fragmented memories have pulled her back into the past. Then, the phone suddenly flies into the air. Choi Ji-won watches the scene from a distance with cold and calculating eyes. Meanwhile, the bully bends down to retrieve the device beneath the desk. Under the dusty desk, a hand silently reaches toward the fallen phone. The classroom remains filled with noise as students gather around and gossip. Seo-woo sits alone while dozens of curious eyes remain fixed on her. One girl watches her with a satisfied smirk, clearly enjoying the situation. Then she suddenly grabs Seo-woo by the shoulder and angrily forces her out of her silence. She sarcastically asks if Seo-woo is finally getting angry before casually walking away. Seo-woo lowers her head in a daze. The pain of her situation becomes almost unbearable. Her thin hand grips the wooden desk so tightly that it makes a sharp screech. She bitterly realizes that she has always been treated like an invisible person, but the teacher's arrival suddenly silences the classroom. Seo-woo quickly pulls herself together and prepares for the lesson. The teacher begins talking about the previous lecture. Seo-woo silently follows the meaningless numbers on the board, but her attention slowly drifts toward the window again. Outside, the cold defensive wall towers beneath the bright sky. To Seo, it looks like another set of shackles keeping her trapped. Then the scene returns to the top of the wall. Si-woo makes a small request to Won-hyuk. Whenever she is at school, she wants him to climb this wall so they can see each other. She looks toward the towering defensive wall and wonders if anyone would actually dare to climb that high. Then she turns toward Won-hyuk with another question. If he stands at the very top, she wants to know whether the people below would be able to see him. Won-hyuk slightly lowers his head with a sorrowful expression. He promises that if he can actually see Seo-woo from above, he will return and confirm it, and surprisingly, he keeps his word. Through the classroom window, a small figure suddenly appears on top of the distant military wall. Seo-woo's eyes widen when she recognizes the familiar silhouette standing proudly beneath the sunny sky. But just as she gets excited, a sudden coughing fit breaks the quiet classroom. Choi Ji-won narrows her eyes behind her glasses and suspiciously watches Seo-woo. The sudden attention makes Seo-woo panic as she quickly covers her mouth. She hides beneath the desk and apologizes, claiming she accidentally choked on some water. Meanwhile, Seo-woo keeps looking at Won-hyuk standing dangerously high above the ground. She wonders if he really went through with such a crazy act, but when she sees him walking along the defensive wall, a faint smile appears on her face. Soon, she recognizes his exact position from earlier. It feels like a secret promise between them. Seo can barely contain her excitement and starts imagining how embarrassed Won-hyuk must be right now. Even with Choi Ji-won's suspicious gaze watching her, Seo stays lost in her own little world. She hides her face against the desk and desperately waits for the lesson to end. She simply wants to return to the bunker and see Won-hyuk's reaction. The scene then shifts to the military trapdoor hidden among the forest trees. Beneath the ground, the old corridors remain cold, dark, and filled with ruins. Seo-woo enters the bunker while breathing heavily and softly calls out for Won-hyuk. She quickly presses the light switch, creating a sharp clicking sound in the silent bunker. The lights suddenly turn on and startle Won-hyuk, forcing him to cover his eyes. His face immediately shows surprise at her unexpected arrival. Seo happily realizes that Won-hyuk is awake. A bright smile spreads across her face and briefly drives away the gloomy atmosphere, but Won-hyuk only lowers his head, looking anxious and weighed down by his thoughts. Seo excitedly confirms that he really kept his promise. She admits that she once thought he would be too embarrassed to climb the wall. Still, she kept watching because she had a tiny bit of hope that he would actually do it. She tells him that at first she thought the figure was some wild animal, but the strange walking style makes her realize it was definitely him. Seo happily talks about how hard it was to hold back her laughter during class. Then Won-hyuk suddenly reaches out and touches her face. The playful mood immediately changes. The two lonely souls stand close together in the dusty corridor, while an awkward silence surrounds them. Seiwoo looks at him in confusion as his hand gently touches near her ear. Won-hyuk becomes melancholic again, feeling like he does not deserve peaceful moments like this. A memory of young Seiwoo smiling brightly returns to him. His hand slowly moves across Seiwoo's cheek. She remains confused by his sudden tenderness and asks if something is stuck on her face, but Won-hyuk continues standing there, making the moment increasingly awkward. Suddenly, a sharp cracking sound comes from beneath their feet. Seiwoo jumps in fear as Won-hyuk looks down. He quickly realizes that she has stepped on a piece of broken glass. The discovery makes Seiwoo anxious again. She remembers Won-hyuk's scar-covered back and the wounds he already carries. Looking around the messy bunker, she suggests that they should clean the place together. Seiwoo points out that Won-hyuk could get hurt even more if they leave the broken debris everywhere. She also complains that constantly wearing shoes inside the bunker would be uncomfortable. Since they are planning to stay here together, she wants to make the place feel more like a real home. Won-hyuk immediately starts preparing cleaning tools. Seiwoo is surprised when he hands her a trash bag and asks whether she brought a mask because the bunker is extremely dusty. He then mysteriously reveals that he has something with a similar purpose. Won-hyuk puts on an old gas mask, completely covering his face except for his deep eyes. Soon, both of them are standing inside the bunker with gas masks and trash bags. They look ridiculous, but they are finally ready to clean the ruins. Seiwoo clears her throat as she tries to get used to breathing through the thick glass lens. She cannot help laughing at their strange appearance. Won-hyuk simply points out that wearing the mask is still better than breathing toxic gas. Seiwoo then remembers how Won-hyuk once rushed to get gas masks during a drill in the auditorium. The memory makes the moment feel strangely familiar. The two of them silently look toward the iron door and the giant ventilation fan hidden in the corner. For a moment, both fall completely silent. The remains of their shared past are sitting right in front of them. Then Won-hyuk suddenly breaks the silence with a playful idea. He suggests turning the cleaning into a competition. Whoever fills their trash bag first gets to make one wish. Seiwoo immediately agrees and starts searching through the debris. Her sudden enthusiasm catches Won-hyuk off guard. Seiwoo quickly runs around collecting trash while he stands behind her, quietly watching. His eyes follow her lively movements through the glass of his gas mask. Soon, both start picking up the scattered debris piece by piece. Every sharp piece of trash goes into their bags as the competition begins. Seiwoo proudly shows off her early advantage with a playful smile. She focuses completely on the task. Her breath fogs the inside of the mask, but her determination does not fade. And just like that, the two lonely souls begin cleaning the abandoned bunker, slowly turning the dark ruins into a temporary home. Seiwoo suddenly accuses Won-hyuk of cheating when she catches him secretly cleaning the kitchen area to fill his bag faster. She playfully calls him sly, but this guy simply bends down and keeps working. Soon, the dark bunker becomes filled with exhaustion, and both decide to stop the competition. Seiwoo removes her gas mask and takes a deep breath. Won-hyuk quietly admits that cleaning a place like this is never as easy as expected. The two trash bags lying beside them clearly show the difference in their results. Won-hyuk calmly declares himself the winner. Seiwoo can only sigh at his stubbornness before accepting her defeat. She then asks what he wants as his prize. While Won-hyuk thinks about his wish, Seiwoo rests her head on her arms. She is tired and simply wants to enjoy the quiet for a moment. Meanwhile, sweat rolls down Won-hyuk's gloomy face as he watches her closely. The bond between them seems to be growing stronger, but Won-hyuk mysteriously says he will reveal his wish only when Seiwoo is about to leave. This leaves her both curious and slightly annoyed. Won-hyuk turns away while sweat runs down his neck. Seiwoo notices that he still sweats easily whenever he gets emotional, just like he did in the past. A memory of Won-hyuk wearing a bandage on his cheek suddenly returns. She remembers the boy she once tried to protect. Looking around the abandoned bunker, Seiwoo feels relieved that his old nature still seems to be there. For a moment, she silently appreciates having her old friend back. The scene then shifts to a sunny cafe filled with students after class. The girls begin gossiping about Seiwoo suddenly laughing to herself at school. They casually decide that she must have completely lost her mind. Jiwoo sits nearby with her chin resting on her hand. She slowly stirs her drink while listening to the cruel gossip about her cousin. The girls around her even pity Jiwoo for having to live with someone they consider a psychopath. Jiwoo touches the cold glass and frowns. She admits that the whole situation is becoming unbearable. One friend immediately agrees and says she already understands how Jiwoo feels. The girl wearing glasses then coldly suggests that they should stop giving Seo-woo any attention. The others exchange knowing looks and silently understand the plan. Ji-woo reminds them to keep treating Seo-woo as if she does not exist, just like they always have. The melting ice cubes sit quietly inside the glass. Their decision to ignore Seo-woo becomes another cruel way of hurting her. Meanwhile, back in the bunker, Seo-woo rests against the rubble after their exhausting cleaning competition. She looks around the endless corridor and asks Won-hyuk if cleaning the entire place in one day is even possible. Won-hyuk gently ruffles her hair and admits that the bunker is simply too large. Seo-woo can only sigh at the massive amount of work ahead. Still, Seo-woo decides to return after school the next day. She does not want to leave her only friend alone in this abandoned place, but Won-hyuk suddenly reminds her that tomorrow is already the weekend. Seo-woo is surprised by how quickly the time has passed. Won-hyuk quietly says that he can stay inside the bunker all day. His melancholic expression makes Seo-woo smile brightly. She excitedly suggests that they spend the entire holiday cleaning the bunker together. Won-hyuk avoids her gaze and awkwardly agrees. Seo-woo then puts her backpack on and prepares to leave after their eventful day. At the trapdoor, Seo-woo tells Won-hyuk to guard the bunker carefully. He responds grumpily that he is not some pet she can order around. Before leaving, Seo-woo suddenly remembers the wish he won from their bet. She asks what he plans to wish for. Won-hyuk turns away awkwardly and explains that his original wish was too easy to fulfill, so he wants more time to think of another one. The rusty door then slams shut, leaving their private world behind. Won-hyuk stands alone inside the dark corridor. His silhouette slowly disappears into the terrifying silence. Sweat runs down his neck as he faces the loneliness that returns the moment Seo-woo leaves. He walks aimlessly across the rotten carpet. Each dry footstep echoes through the bunker like a reminder of the past. Eventually, he reaches a quiet corner as if searching for somewhere to hide from everything. Won-hyuk switches off the light. Darkness immediately swallows the entire bunker again. He sits on an old chair and touches his face, quietly remembering the warmth of Seo-woo's hand. His eyes move toward the rusty trapdoor above. He realizes that tomorrow begins a long weekend. His bandaged finger taps against the table as gloomy thoughts begin filling his mind. Won-hyuk tells himself that everything is perfect when he can remain separated from the prejudiced world outside. Sitting with his head resting on one hand, he accepts that he can survive inside this darkness all day without anyone caring. Meanwhile, Seo-woo's aunt suddenly notices an oversized black shirt hanging on the drying rack. She wonders where such a large piece of clothing came from. Before she can question it further, Seo-woo quickly rushes inside. Seo-woo panics when she realizes she completely forgot about the shirt that once covered Won-hyuk's eyes. She quickly grabs it and awkwardly explains that it belongs to a friend and was only borrowed. She apologizes for not washing it herself. Her aunt gives her a knowing smile. She confirms that it belongs to Seo-woo's friend and points out that Seo-woo has been bothering them quite a lot lately. Then, surprisingly, she suddenly pushes some money into Seo-woo's hands. She tells her niece to buy some good food and enjoy the weekend with her friend. Seo-woo immediately refuses, but her aunt stubbornly keeps pushing the money toward her. She insists that Seo-woo should go out and relax because she is only doing this out of concern. Then she leans closer and wishes her a safe trip before urging her to leave. Seo-woo is stunned when she discovers that her aunt has secretly slipped another embarrassing item into her bag. She can only force out a thank you while feeling overwhelmed by the misunderstanding. Her aunt clearly thinks there is more between Seo-woo and Won-hyuk than simple friendship. Later, Seo-woo stands among clothing stalls and starts questioning the situation. She realizes that both her aunt and Ji-woo seem to believe that Won-hyuk is her boyfriend. Memories of the two lonely children depending on each other begin returning. Seo-woo wonders if their closeness feels different only because Won-hyuk has always been the one person beside her. She then firmly reminds herself that he is simply her friend, nothing more. But the memory of Won-hyuk quietly listening to her and his familiar warmth makes that certainty difficult to maintain. Suddenly, a sales clerk calls out and snaps Seo-woo back to reality. The clerk curiously asks why a schoolgirl is searching for large men's clothing. Seo-woo hesitates while trying to figure out Won-hyuk's clothing size. She picks up an oversized black shirt and holds it against herself. Judging by the size, she estimates that this should be close to his. Her fingers tighten around the collar as she studies the huge shirt. Seo-woo suddenly realizes just how tall and broad Won-hyuk actually is. Before she can think any further, the sales clerk points her toward the large-size men's section. Seo-woo lowers her head in embarrassment after the clerk catches her choosing men's clothes. She quickly grabs the shirt, thanks the clerk, and heads toward the cashier. In barely 3 seconds, she makes her decision and pays for it. The doorbell rings as Seo-woo leaves the store. She hugs the shopping bag tightly against her chest and walks outside with a heavy expression. She then heads back toward the military bunker. While walking, Seo-woo suddenly stops after realizing something. She looks up at the street canopy and realizes that the long years apart were enough for the boy she knew to grow much taller and bigger. She looks back with sadness and bitterly realizes that she herself has barely changed. Seo-woo grabs the rusty iron bar and carefully climbs down. She pokes her head through the trapdoor and enters the dark bunker, but the lights are suddenly off, leaving her confused. She slowly walks inside and wonders if Won-hyuk is sleeping. What she does not realize is that a dark figure is already sitting in the corner. Suddenly, a bandaged hand shoots out and grabs her wrist. Seo-woo spins around in shock and finds Won-hyuk staring at her with tired eyes. He remains seated against the old chair while tightly holding her arm. Heavy breathing fills the pitch-black room. Seo-woo breaks into a cold sweat and blames him for nearly scaring her to death. She then asks why he is sitting in complete darkness. Won-hyuk stays silent, looking completely exhausted and lost in his thoughts. Seo-woo steps back awkwardly and notices that he has changed into different clothes. She tries to explain why she came back, then quickly hands him the paper bag. She tells him that the money from her aunt was supposed to be for eating out, but she decided he needed clothes more. Won-hyuk silently takes the bag. Their shadows stretch across the bunker floor as Seo-woo stands close by. After a moment, he tells her to try the clothes on after they finish cleaning. Then Seo-woo remembers her aunt's instructions about going out with a friend, but Won-hyuk suddenly stops walking. He coldly asks who this friend is supposed to be. 4 large trash bags are already lying along the hallway, showing how much work they have completed. Seo grabs the broom and points toward the giant exhaust fan. She suggests starting there so they can finish faster. Both are covered in sweat as they continue cleaning. Seo-woo desperately tries to ignore the awkward atmosphere between them, but suddenly their broom handles bump into each other. Seo-woo tightens her grip and asks if they are going to make another bet today. The 2 brooms slowly separate as Won-hyuk hesitates. He lowers his head and says there is no point competing because the cleaning is almost finished. His face remains hidden in the shadows. He looks unusually thoughtful, as if struggling to control something inside him. Then their brooms collide again, making the tense atmosphere even more awkward. Seo suddenly feels someone approaching from behind. Won-hyuk silently moves closer, creating an intense pressure in the quiet basement. His rough hand gently brushes through her hair. Seo freezes at the unexpected affection. Won-hyuk casually explains that there is dust in her hair. She remains stunned while holding the phone she has just taken from her pocket. Then Seo-woo suddenly wonders if she has received a message. Won-hyuk immediately turns toward her. His expression becomes highly alert when he hears that her phone has vibrated. He quickly asks who is contacting her at this hour. Then he looks at the screen and notices the phone has no signal. That makes the situation impossible because they are completely isolated inside the bunker. Seo-woo's eyes widen as the truth hits her. The 2 stand silently facing each other. They both realize that they are still trapped inside the same inescapable prison. Seo-woo later sits blankly on the sofa, feeling guilty about making Won-hyuk misunderstand her actions. Her hands tremble as cold sweat covers her body. She finally decides that she cannot keep enduring this suffocating situation. A gentle smile from her memory briefly appears in her mind. Seo-woo suddenly realizes how complicated her feelings have become. She stands up and decides that leaving the bunker immediately is the right thing to do. She tightly grips her handbag and starts walking toward the exit. Seo-woo tells herself that staying here any longer is a mistake. She hopes that once tomorrow comes, everything will return to normal. But that hope disappears instantly. An arm suddenly grabs her tightly while Won-hyuk calls her name. He steps in front of her holding a towel and firmly tells her to stay for the night. Seo-woo becomes completely confused by his sudden demand. A flashback then returns to the moments just before this. She had already been preparing to say goodbye in the dark hallway. The bathroom door remains tightly shut with 2 rusty locks. Then Won-hyuk asks her to bring him a bath towel. Seo-woo nervously agrees and carefully reaches the towel over the partition. She announces herself before handing it over, trying to avoid seeing anything awkward. Suddenly, a dark figure appears. Won-hyuk steps out wearing a loose black shirt and startles her. He quickly takes the towel from her hand and casually reveals that he is already dressed. Seo stares at him in confusion, wondering why he even needed the towel. Before she can think further, Won-hyuk softly calls her name. He begins drying his wet hair and repeats that she should stay tonight. Seo nervously refuses because she needs to go home. But Won Hyuk immediately turns away and says he cannot let her leave. His hand tightly grips the towel. Then he reveals that he is using the wish he won from their bet. Won Hyuk's gloomy expression makes Se-woo realize that he is completely serious. She reluctantly agrees to stay for the night. Later, Se-woo curls up on the old sofa inside the silent bunker. Meanwhile, the glow of a phone screen lights up a bedroom where Choi Ji-won is lying on the bed. Ji-won frowns while typing on her phone. Her sharp eyes remain full of suspicion and calculation. When Se-woo finally enters after washing up, the atmosphere between the two cousins immediately becomes tense. Ji-won coldly points out that Se-woo used to live cautiously, almost like she was afraid of everything. She then questions why Se-woo has suddenly started acting so differently. Se-woo grips the doorknob and quietly says that she will always return home to sleep, no matter what happens. Ji-won immediately snaps back. She sarcastically tells Se-woo to simply invite Won Hyuk over if traveling is such a problem. Se-woo stands barefoot on the cold floor and admits that living inside the bunker is not exactly comfortable either. Ji-won suddenly gives her a threatening stare. She asks why Se-woo still has the courage to return home after seeing that with her own eyes. Se-woo becomes confused and frightened. She asks what terrible thing Ji-won thinks she has seen. Her eyes begin trembling with panic. Se-woo slowly realizes that Ji-won may be hiding a terrifying secret about what really happened. The dark blue paper bag lies in the corner of the room, reminding Se-woo of the humiliation she faced when she was tactfully kicked out. She turns to Ji-won and questions how her younger cousin knows so much about the sensitive things hidden inside. Memories quickly return to the moment Se-woo desperately gathers her scattered belongings while Ji-won simply watches. Ji-won looks confused and frustrated by the non-stop questions. She is clearly bothered because her usually submissive older sister suddenly cares so much about this matter. As the family's secrets become harder to hide, Ji-won starts fearing that Se-woo could become a nuisance again. Trying to act casual, Ji-won explains that she knows everything because it was simply too obvious right in front of her. Se-woo quietly drops into the swivel chair, completely drained. The exhaustion and hopelessness make her look like she has almost no strength left. The room becomes suffocating when Ji-won mockingly questions why Se-woo always sees everything so negatively. She then gives her own assessment of Won Hyuk. According to her, this guy is probably nothing more than an ordinary male friend. Se-woo sits silently with a gloomy expression, making Ji-won stare at her in confusion. She suddenly wonders why her older sister has changed the subject so mysteriously. Se-woo remains curled up in the chair as memories of the time she and Won Hyuk were close return to her. Ji-won becomes visibly annoyed and pushes Se-woo to explain what she is talking about. In the suffocating bedroom, Se-woo painfully asks if everything can remain the same as when they were both children. But Ji-won immediately mocks her for practically living with a man while still calling him a friend. Fed up with the excuses, Ji-won pulls the blanket over her head and declares that she does not care anymore. Se-woo is left sitting alone in terrifying silence. Under the bunk bed, she looks like a forgotten presence slowly fading away. Her face is covered in sweat and sorrow as her empty eyes reveal just how lonely she feels. Meanwhile, Ji-won stays completely silent beneath the blanket. She lies awake in the darkness, hiding the calculations running through her mind. Ji-won's sharp eyes remain fixed through the thin fabric as if she is searching for a way out of the trouble surrounding Nam Se-woo. The room falls completely quiet as the night deepens. Only Se-woo's bare feet remain visible in the middle of the painful family conflict. The memories then take Se-woo back to the old steps outside the house. This is where the friendship between two lonely children begins. Little Se-woo quietly watches the neighbor boy, Won Hyuk, with pure curiosity. She notices the wound on Won Hyuk's cheek and gently places a bandage over it. The simple gesture leaves the boy standing still in surprise. For once, he receives a little warmth and comfort from someone else. Seeing her friend looking flustered, Se-woo tilts her head and wonders why he always has such a gloomy expression. The two children sit together on the steps as she starts noticing how he avoids people's eyes. Won Hyuk immediately turns his face away, showing how naturally he has learned to protect himself from others. Se-woo smiles after realizing that Won Hyuk still cannot look directly at her. Instead of backing away, she moves closer and offers to help him practice making eye contact. She treats it like a simple challenge, but Won Hyuk clearly struggles with it. Se-woo then gives him a challenge. If Won Hyuk can stare directly into her eyes for 10 seconds, she promises to grant him a wish. The boy tries his best, but his eyes remain filled with sadness and insecurity. After only 5 seconds, Se-woo declares that he has failed the challenge, though she still praises him for holding on that long. Won Hyuk lowers his head and admits that he cannot continue, but Seo Woo keeps encouraging him and refuses to let him give up. Suddenly, Seo Woo blushes slightly after carefully looking at him for so long. She realizes something interesting and gives Won Hyuk a sincere compliment. Surprisingly, she tells him that he actually has a very handsome face. The unexpected praise leaves Won Hyuk completely stunned. Sweat appears on his forehead as he receives validation from someone else for the first time. Seo Woo then compares him to Ji Sung Chan, the most popular guy in school, and confidently says Won Hyuk looks even better. She explains that he simply needs more confidence. According to her, people fail to notice his looks because he always avoids eye contact. Seo leans closer with complete sincerity, trying to break through the cold shell surrounding her lonely friend. Won Hyuk finally gives up under her intense encouragement. He quickly covers his burning face with both hands, completely embarrassed by her attention. Seo notices his hair turning red and quietly smiles because she knows she has hit his weak spot. She finds his innocent reactions adorable whenever she teases him. Seo then gently reaches toward his hair, completely absorbed in the sweet memory. But things suddenly get worse when a strong hand emerges from the darkness and grabs her wrist. Seo looks up in shock as Won Hyuk's attitude suddenly changes. He steps closer, and the overwhelming presence of the grown man completely paralyzes her. The peaceful memory instantly turns into something frightening. Seo's eyes widen as she struggles to understand whether this harsh reality is still connected to the childhood days she misses. Won Hyuk keeps his head lowered, while his messy black hair hides his eyes. Yet the pressure around him becomes impossible to ignore. His grip on Seo Woo's wrist grows stronger. His action feels possessive and determined, as if he wants to trap her inside his own world. He coldly orders her to finish what she started, turning the old steps into a place filled with unbearable tension. Won Hyuk then asks why Seo cannot continue staring into his eyes like she did before. His words haunt her so badly that she suddenly wakes up in the middle of the night. She is drenched in sweat and breathing heavily after being trapped inside the terrifying nightmare. Seo desperately clutches the blanket as images of her old friend continue flashing through her mind. The fear follows her even after waking up. By the next morning, she is still questioning why these disturbing feelings refuse to disappear. She walks through the school hallway quietly, trying to become as invisible as possible. The students around her continue watching and whispering, making her feel even more isolated. Seo looks down at her old shoes and blames herself for dreaming about Won Hyuk after deliberately avoiding him the previous day. When she reaches the classroom door, her heart remains heavy. She cannot stop wondering whether the present is still as painful as their childhood days. Seo Woo cautiously pushes the wooden door open and enters, still unable to understand why Namhyuk's words sounded so dark. The familiar classroom immediately surrounds her with invisible pressure. Her classmates gather together, laughing and talking, which only makes her feel more like an outsider. Seo-woo's eyes then settle on a certain person through the glass window. The sight of him brings back fragments of their childhood bond. Those memories briefly feel like a sedative for her already fragile emotions. But when she returns to reality, Seo quickly shifts her gaze away, still uncertain about how everything has changed so dramatically. The classroom remains full of laughter while Seo stays completely separated from the crowd. She cautiously enters and feels the students' indifference like another cruel part of her daily life. Soon, everyone starts talking about going to a cafe after school. Seo quietly sits among them without actually being part of the excitement. Her eyes fill with sadness as she listens to the invitations she is never included in. Then, surprisingly, she turns toward the friend beside her and notices his lips are badly chapped. Instead of joining the conversation, Seo simply reminds him that his lips are chapped. She advises him to use lip balm right away. Even in her loneliness, she still notices and cares about the smallest things around her. The male student suspiciously asks if the lip balm is clean. Seo patiently assures him that it is completely brand new. She quietly hands it over but worries that this simple act of kindness could become another reason for gossip. Just then, another male student enters the classroom and breaks the gloomy atmosphere around Seo. He approaches two friends who are joking around and sarcastically tells one of them to look in the mirror. The guy checks his phone screen and immediately realizes that he has become the target of everyone's laughter. The female students continue laughing while discussing lip balm and skin tones. Meanwhile, Seo sits quietly behind the window, completely separated from their cheerful world. Her gloomy expression shows how clearly she notices the shallow relationships around her. She watches her classmates interact and struggles to understand why nobody sees their relationships differently. Their casual behavior and innocent friendship seem to hide something that everyone else refuses to notice. Memories of her aunt's advice and the time she bought men's clothes suddenly return, leaving Seo-woo dizzy from the changes around her. Her fingers lightly tap against the desk without realizing it. The small gesture reveals how badly she wants someone to truly understand her. But before she can sink deeper into those thoughts, someone suddenly calls her name from the classroom door. Siwoo immediately jumps in surprise. She learns that the science teacher wants to see her. This makes her nervous because the teacher is Won-hyuk's homeroom teacher, and she has no idea why he suddenly wants to meet her. Meanwhile, a heavily bandaged hand appears in the darkness as heavy breathing fills the empty space. Won-hyuk is sitting alone inside the classroom, surrounded by silence. His exhausted face shows how badly the emotional pressure is wearing him down. His eyes remain fixed on the trapdoor leading to the military bunker. The thought of Seo-woo not coming today clearly weighs on him. The boy stays alone in the darkness, waiting while his strength slowly disappears. At the science office, Seo-woo stands nervously in front of the teacher. He checks through several documents before revealing that Won-hyuk has been absent for more than a week. The teacher's worried expression makes the situation feel even more serious. Then the teacher suddenly reacts with surprise after realizing Seo-woo is actually a girl. She stares blankly at him, confused by the unexpected reaction. The teacher quickly explains that he only heard from other students that the two are close friends. This immediately puts Seo-woo under suspicion. The teacher even admits that he originally assumed the name Nam Seo-woo belonged to a male student. He then directly questions what kind of relationship she really has with Won-hyuk. Seo-woo freezes at the question. A bad feeling suddenly takes over as memories of the shelter and the black shirt flash through her mind. She hides her trembling hands behind her back and calmly explains that she and Won-hyuk have known each other since elementary school. The office becomes completely silent. The teacher simply stares at her with a cold and authoritative expression. Instead of accepting her explanation, he suddenly begins questioning why she would associate with someone who has such a terrible record. He holds up Won-hyuk's suspension warning and claims that people like him only ruin their own lives. He also warns that they eventually drag everyone around them down. Then he brings up Seo-woo living with her aunt and tells her to stay clear-headed. The teacher argues that lonely people are more likely to develop blind sympathy for one another. Seo-woo is completely stunned by his cruel words. Things get even worse when he tells her not to do anything that could make her parents ashamed of her even after death. Seo-woo's eyes tremble with anger. She cannot believe someone who is supposed to be an educator can speak so disrespectfully. Just as the teacher prepares to give Won-hyuk's suspension notice to the class president, Seo-woo suddenly stops him. She slams her hand on the desk and firmly objects. The entire office instantly becomes tense. Seo-woo takes the suspension notice herself and declares that she will be the one to deliver it. Before the teacher can say anything else, Seo-woo turns around and quickly leaves. Once outside, she angrily tears the suspension notice into pieces. The scraps fall to the ground as she silently resents the way everyone keeps judging her and Won-hyuk. Standing beside the trash can, Seo-woo becomes overwhelmed by the situation. She wonders whether these outsiders could ever understand the pain both of them carry. Memories of their childhood friendship return, reminding her of the strong bond she believes still exists. She stares deeply at the shredded paper while holding back her tears. All she wants is to feel the same peaceful comfort she once had during those childhood days. Her eyes fill with sadness, but a quiet determination also begins to appear. At the bottom of the trash can, the torn suspension notice lies beside the lip balm. Both items silently mark the beginning of another difficult chapter. Meanwhile, Won-hyuk tightly grips a rusted iron bar inside the gloomy basement. The hollow sound of metal echoes through the dark space. Won-hyuk slowly climbs the stairs with his arm covered in white bandages. His exhausted face shows that the emotional burden is still weighing heavily on him. Suddenly, the iron door opens. Nam Seo-woo unexpectedly walks inside, and the outside light immediately catches Won-hyuk's attention. The two stand frozen in the cold room, surrounded by an uncomfortable silence. Won-hyuk slowly turns toward her with a sharp expression. He questions why she disappeared yesterday without saying anything. Seo-woo remains silent, her sorrowful face showing that she is struggling to hide something. Won-hyuk notices her avoidance and becomes visibly irritated. He asks how much longer she plans to remain silent. He then bitterly reveals that he almost decided to leave the shelter forever. His words make Seo-woo's situation even heavier. She stands completely still with both hands hidden inside her skirt pockets. Her nervous movements clearly reveal that she is trying to protect something. Won-hyuk immediately notices the strange behavior. His sharp eyes focus on her pockets as he questions what mysterious thing she is hiding. Sweat forms on Seo-woo's face as she lowers her head and remains silent. Won Hyuk becomes even more impatient. He steps closer and demands to know why she still refuses to tell him anything. But then he suddenly stops. The determined look in Seo-woo's eyes leaves him completely stunned. Seo-woo suddenly reaches out and lifts Won Hyuk's chin. She carefully checks the wounds covering his face and notices that his lips are badly chapped too. Without wasting time, she pulls out the familiar red lip balm from her skirt pocket and offers it to him. Won Hyuk quickly looks away and tells her to forget about it. He assumes she has already used the lip balm herself. Meanwhile, memories of Seo-woo sitting alone in the noisy classroom flash through his mind. Seo-woo refuses to back down. She explains that they are friends, so sharing something as simple as lip balm should not be a big deal. She firmly places it in Won Hyuk's hand and urges him to use plenty of it so his lips stop hurting. Won Hyuk suddenly reaches toward her, making Seo-woo step back in surprise. He touches his own neck and realizes that their conversation has once again reached the same painful dead end. Then he asks why Seo-woo can no longer look directly at him like she used to. Won Hyuk tightly grabs her wrist and bitterly points out that even their dream of escaping only means running away from the people outside. He then takes the lip balm and tells Seo-woo to stay still so he can apply it for her. Despite her repeated refusal, he moves closer. The bright red lip balm slowly approaches Seo-woo as the atmosphere becomes extremely tense. Suddenly, Won Hyuk's body jolts and he covers his mouth in dizziness. The lip balm slips from his hand and falls onto the cold basement floor. The ground suddenly shakes beneath them. Won Hyuk quickly apologizes while Seo-woo panics and checks if he is okay. He bends down to pick up the lip balm, but Seo-woo quickly reaches out to support him because he looks completely exhausted. As Seo-woo sits on the floor, Won Hyuk picks up the lip balm and questions her distant behavior since yesterday. He then looks at her shoes and asks why she keeps carrying something she never even uses herself. Seo-woo awkwardly explains that it was only a joke and she was simply teasing him like friends do. Won Hyuk slowly twists the lip balm in his hand. His face turns slightly red as he questions what exactly she means by a joke between friends. The atmosphere immediately becomes uncomfortable. Siwa quickly makes an excuse that she needs to find something to wipe the lip balm clean. Before she can stand, Won Hyuk takes a heavy step forward. He bends down towards Seo-woo, leaving her completely stunned. With sweat forming on her face, she listens as he admits that he never believed she truly saw him as a friend. Won Hyuk moves closer and points out that if they really are friends, then he should also be allowed to play the same kind of joke on her. He gently lifts Seo-woo's chin and locks his intense gaze onto her guarded face. The sudden closeness leaves her unable to move. His expression becomes darker as he warns her that she should let go before things reach a tragic ending like his own. Seo-woo remains frozen, overwhelmed by the strange situation. The cold basement becomes completely silent around the two lonely friends. Won Hyuk then uses the lip balm to carefully apply it to Seo-woo's lips. His movements are surprisingly gentle, as if he is afraid of hurting her. He sits on the rusted stairs while keeping close to her, creating an uncomfortable feeling of both protection and confinement. Fragments of their painful past suddenly return to Seo-woo. She realizes that she has spent far too long avoiding the truth. Won Hyuk lifts her chin and asks whether all the suffering she is experiencing comes from his presence. Seo-woo awkwardly makes a strange expression to hide her embarrassment. She quickly denies that she is thinking about anything serious, but Won Hyuk continues watching her closely. His thumb briefly brushes against her lips while he finishes applying the lip balm. The sudden closeness makes the atmosphere even more tense. Won Hyuk's melancholic gaze remains fixed on Seo-woo's flushed face. He holds her face firmly while she remains completely frozen. Her eyes show clear fear and confusion. Won Hyuk studies her expression as if desperately searching for some kind of hope in the darkness around them. His rough finger gently moves across her lips again. The gesture feels awkward but carries an intense emotional weight. Won Hyuk keeps Seo close as he finishes applying the lip balm, almost as if he is afraid of losing his only friend. His eyes suddenly become deeply sorrowful. They reveal the loneliness of someone who has always been rejected by the outside world. Seo-woo nervously asks him to stop because the closeness is becoming too much for her. Won Hyuk looks down at the lip balm in his hand. His expression shows that he is struggling with emotions he cannot explain. Then his voice becomes deeper as he announces that if she is finished, it is now his turn to do what he intended. The distance between them becomes dangerously small. Won Hyuk leans closer while Seo-woo's face turns bright red from embarrassment. She stares at him in complete shock, unable to understand this sudden change in her old friend. His fingers brush against her lips again, leaving Seo-woo completely paralyzed by the unexpected situation. She quickly covers her mouth to stop herself from crying out. Her eyes remain wide as she faces his heavy breathing and intense gaze. The two remain on the cold basement floor as Won Hyuk closes the remaining distance between them. Sewoo's heart races from the overwhelming tension, but suddenly, Won Hyuk pulls away. He lowers his head in deep regret and quietly apologizes for what he just did. Seo remains completely shocked. She slowly raises her hand and tries to calm herself by smoothing her hair. Seo nervously questions what that moment actually meant. Uneasiness spreads through her as she realizes how unstable Won Hyuk has become. Still, she forces a strained smile and gently tries to calm the suffocating atmosphere. Then, memories of their happy childhood return once again. Those moments remind Seo that their once close bond has been deeply damaged by the cruel reality surrounding them. Yet even after everything, the connection between these two lonely souls still refuses to disappear. Seo sinks into complete emptiness as guilt and confusion continue crushing her. Won Hyuk slowly loosens his grip and looks directly at her with a tired expression. He gently holds her trembling hands and assures her that everything is fine. Won Hyuk insists that what happened earlier was only a joke between friends. Seo looks at their tightly held hands and struggles to understand whether friendship means crossing such boundaries in his world. Won Hyuk confidently says that it does, but suddenly goes quiet when Seo asks if he even has any other friends. The question exposes his painful loneliness. Won Hyuk tries to make the situation seem normal by saying that everything is fine between friends, but Seo can only lower her head while the awkward silence becomes heavier. Won Hyuk's face disappears into the darkness of the bunker. His expression shows someone desperately craving a connection but unable to express it properly. He then moves closer and questions why Seo rejected him earlier if they truly are friends. The lip balm remains on the cold floor between them. It becomes a silent reminder of the strange idea of friendship Won Hyuk is trying to force onto her. He finally turns away with a sorrowful expression, leaving the entire space filled with tension. After a moment, Won Hyuk gently touches Seo's hair. He finally agrees to let her go and tells her that she does not have to answer everything. Seo simply lowers her head, hiding the heavy emotions in her eyes. The feeling of being trapped becomes even stronger. She cannot even understand what she felt during that moment. But before she can move away, Won Hyuk suddenly grabs her wrist again. Seo immediately tries to reject him, but Won Hyuk refuses to let her escape the conversation. She tremblingly explains that no matter what he thinks, the truth is different because he has always held a special place in her life. Her words make Won Hyuk freeze. His melancholic eyes suddenly tremble with emotion. Being told that he is her only friend clearly affects him more than he expects. Without warning, Won Hyuk lifts Seo into his arms. She cries out in surprise and struggles to understand what he is doing. He simply carries her through the cold water while ignoring her repeated questions. Won Hyuk then asks whether friendship is truly what Seo wants. He eventually agrees to compromise but adds one mysterious condition. If he puts her down now, her clothes will get soaked, meaning she will have to remain inside the bunker until they dry. He carries her deeper through the dark passage. Won Hyuk then asks whether there is any other male friend who would dare to behave this way with her. Seo's eyes tremble as the question reaches a painful part of her lonely life. She quietly shakes her head and leans against his shoulder. With tears building in her eyes, Seo admits that Won Hyuk is the only friend she has in this world. Her confession finally gives the lonely boy some relief. Won Hyuk silently remembers the time Seo jokingly called him a loser. Seo awkwardly tries to explain what she meant while her heartbeat continues racing because of their closeness. Won Hyuk's expression suddenly becomes unusually satisfied. Seo notices his strange reaction and wonders if he is actually happy about being called a loser. Won Hyuk confidently accepts it, seemingly pleased that she sees him differently from everyone else. Their emotional distance finally begins disappearing. Won Hyuk steps closer and again asks Seo to make her final choice. She remains stunned and questions the mysterious condition he keeps mentioning. He suddenly lifts her again and tells her to stay still if she does not want to fall into the cold water. Seo complains about being left isolated because of him, yet the close distance only makes her more confused. Won Hyuk eventually brings her near the dark stone wall, creating another tense silence between them. Seo's gaze becomes distant. She starts wondering whether she is running away from reality or slowly being manipulated by Won Hyuk. Meanwhile, he looks at her dangling shoes and calmly assures her that she is still safe. He continues walking through the water toward the exit. At the same time, he reminds her that he still has not revealed the true condition behind his mysterious offer. Back in the classroom, Seo sits with her head lowered, completely exhausted. The classmates around her continue whispering and mocking her orphan status. Siwoo silently endures their cruel treatment and rests her head on the desk. Her face is covered in sweat as her thoughts become increasingly chaotic. She begins questioning the strange emotions she experienced earlier. Memories of the past return, and she admits to herself that she was genuinely terrified, but she still cannot understand exactly where that fear came from. Seo eventually stands by the classroom window and stares outside with sorrowful eyes. Her gaze settles on the distant gray military wall. The structure seems connected to the mysterious situation that has been controlling her life. She wonders what kind of terrible condition could make Won Hyuk behave so extremely. Then the story returns to the underground bunker. Won Hyuk holds Seo close and tells her that everything will happen exactly as she said. He gently touches her hair and reveals his possessive condition. From now on, he wants to be the only person beside her. He then firmly tells Seo not to associate with anyone else. In exchange, Won Hyuk promises that he will remain an ordinary friend for the rest of their lives. Back at her desk, Seo touches the back of her neck while remembering his childish demand. She finds the condition ridiculous, but at least it reassures her that their relationship will not completely change. Just then, the teacher announces that a transfer student is joining the class. Seo barely reacts because she is already used to being alone. The teacher instructs the newcomer to sit beside her and share her textbook. The students immediately begin whispering about the new guy's handsome appearance and noticeable scars. Seo ignores all of it and keeps staring out the window. She tells herself that she has no reason to get close to anyone. Her eyes remain fixed on the gray military structure outside. She simply hopes her life can continue peacefully like this. But suddenly, a strong hand reaches over and slams the window shut. The loud thud instantly breaks Seo out of her thoughts. The newcomer leans toward her and blocks her space with an unexpectedly familiar posture. He casually explains that he only closed the window to stop the cold air from escaping. Siwoo looks up in complete shock. The face in front of her feels both unfamiliar and strangely familiar at the same time. Then the newcomer gives her a sinister smile and greets her after such a long time. The mysterious transfer student is none other than Ji Sung-chan.